Happy Friday, SMITE fans, and welcome back to another day of the Phase 3 playoffs here in the SMITE Pro League. We're going to be sending two of our teams home to Worlds today. It's going to be a great day, and all of this brought to us by our good friends over at Prime Gaming. If every single month you're sitting there thinking, man, I just don't have enough games in my catalog. Don't have enough stuff in the games that I'm playing, and I just can't give a Twitch subscription to my favorite streamer. Well, if you get Prime Gaming, then you can get all of that. More games every single month, more free in-game content, and a free Twitch sub to that streamer that you wanted to give it over to. So make sure that you make the most out of your Prime membership account by doing so. Link that over to your Twitch account and getting all that great stuff, along with all the great benefits that you get from a Prime membership itself. Thank you so much to Prime Gaming for being the title sponsor of Season 9 of the SMITE Pro League. It's day number 2 now of the playoffs for Phase number 3. I'm J-Mac. I got Mifflin joining me on the desk. And as I said, Mifflin, we're taking 2 teams from the 4 today, and they're qualifying to the SMITE World Championships at the end of the day.
And I think that all the teams playing today are probably just straight-up favorites to make it to the World Championship through this weekend. So maybe not the highest implications on whether or not they're going to make it, but getting in as early as possible, obviously, just the most ideal situation.
And for all the teams this weekend, they are playing for 4 of those spots going to the SWC in January. So the name of the game today is you win your sets, you get to go to Worlds. For the teams that don't win today, there's still a chance tomorrow, and then we'll have our seeding matches on Sunday. But then that'll be it. Of those, it means that 2 teams aren't going to make it from the 6 that are playing today. They're going to be seen again in January with the other 2 teams from the SPL, the Valks and the Scarabs, who didn't make it to this event, as well as the top 4 SCC/SOC teams. They're going to be playing in the next 2 weeks on December 8th and December 15th, so make sure you're tuning into those to see which of those 4 teams are going to be facing off against these 4 SMITE Pro League teams that don't make it from this weekend, and then we'll take all 8 of those, and they'll be facing off on January 13th through the 15th at the Esports Arena in Arlington, Texas, for the SMITE World Championship. We'll take a look at the bracket, though, so that way you guys can see exactly what's going to be happening for the remainder of the weekend with our matchups yesterday. That gives us today the Leviathans and the Titans, the Dragons, and the Kings will be our 2. And remember, from here on out, all matchups are going to be best of 5. And then we'll have the losers from today's matchups go down to face between the Bolts and the Warriors. They'll have their final chance where 2 of those teams tomorrow will be eliminated from this event at the very least. Still a chance for SWC later on as mentioned, but the 2 teams that win today go to Worlds. They'll have a seeding match on Sunday. Then the 2 winners from tomorrow will also have a seeding match to see who moves on.
Man, and the matchups today are really exciting. The Leviathans up against the Titans, I think, just going to have really high implications on the growth of the Titans and how they've adapted with their new jungler. The J-Dragons up against the Camelot Kings, obviously a headliner as well. I'm really excited, man.
Yeah, I mean, between the Titans and the Leviathans, I mean, this is a storied match. We go all the way back to Season 8 World Championship. Finals of a rematch there. We look at the history of these 2 teams so far throughout this season alone. It's gone a little bit more in favor of the Atlantis Leviathans as of recent, a 5-3 head-to-head record between the Leviathans and the Titans in that regard. But the Leviathans have definitely been on the rise as a Phase 3. It's been kind of middle of the pack for Leviathans from Phase 1 and Phase 2, but in Phase 3, Mifflin, this team has really heated up, and I think a lot of that could be off the back of the new solo later they picked up, Haddix, for the squad.
Yeah, I think it's probably twofold. Obviously, Haddix has looked phenomenal with this team. Fits in very well. It was essentially plug and play. There was no growth period. He came in, and it looked good immediately. But it almost feels as if it was by design, the trajectory of the Leviathans throughout the year. Phase 1, Phase 2, they're taking it easy, developing strategies. And then Phase 3, they're like, all right, it's time. World's around the corner. Let's get active. And they've done exactly that, man. It is a complete heel turn from the performance that we expected going from the previous phases. And it was always on the mind of the fans or, memed around the office. You'll hear Zapman saying, look, we're just practicing. Early on in the year, we're just practicing. We're not taking it too serious. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I guess you kind of have to say that, right? With the performances and the expectations. And then in Phase 3, he was like, no, I was serious. And since then, the Leviathans have only impressed.
I mean, they went on this phase to break the near 6-year standing record from NRG, which was, set wins in a row, finally toppling that one, adding 11 to their column in a row this phase. So, yeah, I think it's safe to say that they have certainly heated up in Phase number 3, and they continue to do so. Sure, their performance in the last week may have been something to desire, but they'd already locked in first seed by that point, trying out a couple of new things throughout there. But I think for Leviathans fans, they probably don't have to worry too much about this team potentially qualifying over and towards Worlds.
No, certainly a favorite. The reigning world champions are I'm going to go ahead and say essentially locked to make it to Worlds. And if it's not today, it'll be tomorrow. And if it's not tomorrow, it'll be the next day, right? So it is. It's an inevitability. Inevitability? Something like that. I don't know. I'm not Thanos.
Yeah, I think you got the right word there. And good thing is that we'll have to have a word with the solo laner we've been talking about. Haddix standing by with Dulcin for our pregame interview.
Yeah, Haddix here with me. And Haddix, look, we expect this Leviathans team, whether it's today, later on this weekend, unlikely it goes to group stages, to qualify for the SMITE World Championship. How important do you think it is to just check that box today, win this set, and go ahead and book your ticket to Worlds?
I mean, we're going to get there no matter what, even if we qualify, more practice.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely nice to just check in today and get in there.
These matches now shift from best of 3 to best of 5. You've played best of 3s all years outside of the tournament events. Do you think that changes the dynamic for you guys much? The game plan relatively stay the same in a best of 5?
I mean, best of 3s definitely change a lot. I mean, you can adapt a lot more during a set compared to a best of 3. You know, you could just stomp 2 games. Obviously, you've seen what best of 5s can do at Worlds, and it's no different here. So, I mean, there's definitely a big difference for sure.
And maybe a bit of a difference for this Titans team. We saw yesterday playing with their new jungler, Cyno. Is that something you feel like you've had to change up some game plans going up against the new jungler for this Titans team?
You know, Cyno's a problem. He's a bit of a problem. He's definitely got some unique play styles, some different things about him that you have to be concerned about, you have to look at. So it definitely changes your game plans for sure, and we're looking out for him.
And, you know, I'm wondering, do you have a horse in this race? They got to play yesterday. You guys get a bye to this round of the tournament. Do you think that extra gameplay for them yesterday really makes a difference?
The extra gameplay? I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously practice before any set. That's why you look at teams like that go through the qualifying events. I mean, getting that confidence of beating teams, going in before a better team, it could definitely help you, for sure.
Well, expected to qualify to Worlds one way or another. You'd like to get it done here today. Thanks for your time. We'll go back to the desk to start this one off.
You know, I'm kind of piggybacking off that point of, you know, teams making their runs through qualifiers. There's one commonality with that on the player on their team. Zapman, in all of his World Championship runs, has had to go through some kind of qualification stage before making it to the Worlds. It's usually that kind of last chance qualifier, whether that be all the way back on his SK, his PK day, and even last year with the Leviathans had to make a little bit of that run. So whether they make it this weekend or not, doesn't seem like it's too concerned, at least with Haddix and the rest of the teams out there. But they are going up against the Tartarus Titans. New player for their roster. Remember, Cyno now joining the jungle in this squad in place of Layers. But we talked a lot about Cyno and everything yesterday. Let's talk a little bit about Aror, and specifically this Maui that he picked up. I believe it was a 2-0 and 23 between the 2 games that he played on there. Really had a great first showing of this god out here in the SW, or not the SWC, the Season 3 playoffs.
I mean, Aror was very impressive. It was clean initiations on a god that I think is very easy to get ahead of yourself. So often we'll see Maui's leap in aggressively, say, all right, I'm going to hit him with a triple pull combo, but your leap's down and you get immediately turned on because you haven't really got the best ways to defend yourself. Going undying on support and affecting as many kills as Aror did, nothing short of just perfect play. He sets up every single engagement, barring the ones that were started up by Cyno, which were a fair few, especially in Game 1. But otherwise, I don't think you need to associate Aror's success only with Maui. Of course, if you look at his most recent 6 games, some of those matches in the bottom 4, probably not as impressive. That Maui standout performance as of recency bias, but this is a guy that is very capable of playing just about every single style of support, be it those backline facilitators like Gavin Kepri, those in-your-face style picks, like the Maui, just standard aggressive Ares style stuff as well. And then also is one of the supports in the league that is very capable of playing Yamoja. When I think of Aror, I think of versatile play, but Aror at his best is that aggressive playmaker. He wants to be secondary jungler on the map, and I think Maui fits that style, so it's one that he can slot comfortably into his god pool.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at some of the recent gods that even he's been playing, not just the Maui, but the Atlas, the Ares are definitely things that he has been kind of bringing up into his wheelhouse a little bit more. So being able to be that initiator for his squad has really allowed for the rest of his team to kind of set up. It's allowed Paul to have his pop-up games. We've been seeing so many games now where Paul has eaten a couple of priority bans. Not saying that we'll see teams immediately shift over towards trying to ban Aror out, but we have been seeing a lot of adaptability in picks and bans from teams.
But I agree that Paul was eating a lot of bans yesterday, but his best pick, his most winning pick, was ignored. If you're going to dedicate time to banning Paul, maybe ban the Vulcan? I don't know.
Maybe.
I'm a caster. I couldn't play, so you know what am I to say? I can't pass on judgment, but just feels like when he's sitting around at like an 80-85% win rate on an individual pick that he's willing to go to every single week, might be something you want to put your eyes on.
Yeah, I mean, you look back at his most recent 6, 2 losses on a Zeus, a loss on a Hell, and 3 wins on Vulcan. So we take just that into account. Maybe take the Vulcan away. We've been mostly seeing bans as far as Set and Hell are concerned. Those kind of seem to be the 2 commonalities for a lot of teams banning away. Paul, really one of the only players still playing Hell in the league. Set has been a popular one amongst the mid-laners. We'll see if he gets either of those or maybe a Vulcan as we jump into the picks and bans for game number 1 between the Atlantis Leviathans and the Tartarus Titans. Remember, this is a best of 5 for the remainder of the weekend, not just for this set, not just for today's sets. Every single set from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday will be best of 5. And those are really where, in my opinion, that's where the picks and bans get real fun, Mifflins. Once you get past game 1 and game 2, you kind of get the initial target bans. Like, okay, well, this guy's just really good on this. Once you start getting to like the depths of game 4 and 5, it gets really specific with those kinds of picks and bans.
Yeah, and to speak more to your point, generally in longer sets, especially in MOBAs, and SMITE is a MOBA, so fits in line with this line of thought. Early games in best of 5s generally lean towards the most standard selections that you can think of. The Titans are going to play a standard Titans draft that we would have expected to see last week or 2 weeks ago, rather, when we were still broadcasting. Leviathans are going to play exactly as they have been. Adaptations start to occur around games 3, games 4, and if it goes all the way to 5, that's generally where you're looking at almost holistically different compositions from these teams. So I'm not expecting really anything wild here in game 1. Just get those meta selections and make sure that you're able to play well on day of.
Well, Titans are sticking with the meta for bans out there, Umoja and Ishtar for their first 2. Leviathans maybe a little bit more targeted in their regards. Set taken away, as that was a power pick for Paul as the season was going on, especially this phase. And then the Najah to take that one out of Cyno's hands. A great standout performance by the new jungler for the Titans yesterday on one of his signature picks. So no surprise to see that one eat a ban this early on. Leviathans taking a little bit of time for their final ban, and it will still be sticking to the meta, taking Cupid out of Stuart's hands. And again, no surprise to the performance Stuart had on it yesterday.
Yeah, Stu very, very good at holding his own in that lane and then rotating these team fights and controlling space with the Cupid pick. So could be one that shakes up the Titans draft ever so slightly. And the Titans actually giving a bit of a respect ban towards Sheento, take out the Vulcan themselves. Couple of really high priority picks still available. If we were talking a couple weeks back, generally Guardian selection this high up. Maybe you look towards things like the Ymir. Whether or not the Leviathans respect the Maui selection from the Titans, they could take it here for themselves, just to act as a 4th ban if they so choose, or I trust Ronngyu to play it at a very high level as well. So curious to see what the Leviathans go for here. I would expect the Leviathans to lean more so towards their later game tendencies, those later game styles of
Simply
draft.
gazing at us can change the outcome of the greatest
The Morrigan,
wars.
definitely going to be a great pick for Sheento, one that he's been able to take multiple times throughout. Not just this phase, but also this season. This has been a pick that we have seen the Leviathans go over towards. It's something that Paul himself on the Tartarus Titans also does love to play, has won many games on it in the past, so acts as an extra ban there. And with that Vulcan eating the ban for the Titans as well, means that that mate's going to be out. So I'm curious now where the Titans will go, because we were just talking about, you know, take away some of the signature picks of Paul's. Now with Set gone, Vulcan off the table, the Morrigan. That does leave Hell open, but is Hell something that, I know we've only seen, you know, 1 pick so far, Miff, but do you think Hell is even kind of a pick in this meta that would be something that Paul would stray towards?
I think that Hell has good matchups. There are compositions that you can look at and say, man, Hell would feel really good here, really rounds out our draft incredibly well. I don't think Hell is in a position right now where you want to take her this early in the draft. If anything, maybe you take it in 3rd slot, and then you could dedicate your next 2 bans to really facilitating your Hell. Things like Cabrakan and Ymir make it very difficult to operate on that pick. So if the Titans were to take it, it would be here, and I would really likely expect a couple Guardian bans to follow.
We have zipped through these last few picks here. Bellona, Cernunnos, and Hell, all for the Tartarus Titans. Dodgy, Cthulhu, and the Morrigan, so double Palau, double Cthulhu, all an option already for Leviathans. That is a scary combination. Usually you give one of those 2 to the other team, and you're like, all right, cool, we got at least the Morrigan Dodgy for ourselves, or the Morrigan Cthulhu. This is a scary top 3 for the Leviathans, Mifflin.
It is. It's a really strong composition, and having the opportunity to double Palau in the early game puts pressure on beads really, really well. Having that late game transition to, hey, I'm no longer secondary Daji, I'm secondary Cthulhu, good luck team fighting us, is a really valid option for the Leviathans. But double Daji has been dealt with ever so slightly by the Titans. Having that cleanse on essentially a 10-second cooldown, especially if Paul goes towards what I'm going to call the Paul build, which is Breastplate of Valor anywhere in the first 3 items, it's pretty unlikely that he gets pulled in any of these situations. So I like the Hell as a direct counter into that Daji, but the Leviathans have certainly got an edge in pressure as of now. We haven't quite seen the Jungler, but I expect the Morrigan to be able to rotate around the map very, very well. Maybe if I'm the Titans here, I'm begging, Cyno, play something standard. Let's get you on something aggressive. And Osiris could go a long way here. Mannequins into the Morrigan means that you won't really be allowed to use that stealth, and it's pretty easy for an Osiris to stick to that kind of pick. But it's Cyno, so good luck guessing where he's going.
Yeah, I mean, when we talked with Aror in the postgame yesterday, I asked him, how'd you kind of feel about, Cyno picking up Chaac? And he said, well, we kind of just told Cyno, play whatever you're comfortable with. We trust you. You're a good player.
They were
That's
right
where he
to
went
it.
with the Chaac. They end up winning that game. So I imagine at least in the discussions for the Tartarus Titans, it's well, Cyno, what do you feel like playing into this composition? What do you think might be good for yourself, and what do you think might be good for the team here? Cabrakan will be the immediate pick after for the Tartarus Titans, without a pick for Aror. Potential that we will be seeing this Cabrakan go over to his role, as we've been seeing the Cabrakan support a little bit more often.
Yeah, I do think it is likely to head at Aurora. We haven't seen Cyno play Cabrakan jungle, I think, in like an entire calendar year, so been a while since he's been locking that one in consistently. The wall has decent matchup into the Morrigan. Tremors means that as long as you're applying that stun, you're probably not allowed to use the stealth as the Morrigan. You've got really good ganks if you can make a rotation over towards the soul lane. Cthulhu struggles to deal with those walls as well. And it is exactly what we were talking about a little bit earlier. Aror looks his best when he's allowed to walk you down and just be aggressive. Cabrakan does exactly that, and the damage output, very nice as well. Has the opportunity to itemize a little bit more so towards bruiser items if he so chooses. And it should help out a little bit with the expected Breastplate of Valor build from Paul, who should sacrifice a little bit of damage in mid, make it up in support. So again, I love what the Titans have got in their top 4, but it is so difficult to look at this Leviathans draft and just have anything to complain about, right? I mean, every single one of these picks just synergizes so well. So now with maybe a Heimdallr hover, I was expecting Charybdis, but Heimdallr operates pretty similarly. Put Zapman on something safe, have him sit on an island, let the rest of the team do their work.
Yeah, it really does kind of feel like what the Leviathans have drafted is a 4 dive and say, Zapman, have something safe so you can kind of sit by yourself in the backline, because Sheento's not going to stick around with Zapman, most likely. He's going to be trying to go for some of those flank plays. Ronngyu now for the Atlas as the final pick up with the Leviathans. And that does leave us to wonder, is this Cabrakan going to be for Aror? Is it going to be for Cyno? We'll have to see with this final selection that the Tartarus Titans are hovering. Bellona likely for SOT over there. Cernunnos over for Stuart. And currently hovering a Pele. Now, Pele at the start of the phase was one of the top picks to go over towards, even towards kind of the tail end of phase number 2. It was one of the hottest picks that you could go in towards the jungle. And it will be the final pick for the Tartarus Titans. How do you feel about the Pele for this composition, Mifflin?
I think the Pele is a smart answer to Heimdallr. It's a smart answer to the Morrigan. You've got great chase potential, highly mobile, phenomenal burst, and the ability to deal with that Morrigan stealth pretty consistently. If Cthulhu's just standing in your way in the middle of a team fight, Volcanic Lightning giving you those AoE cone autos will mean you can at least apply some damage to that backline, even if you've been blocked out. So certainly a god and a pick and player combo that I think Cyno is comfortable with. But it's not that same level of space creation that I was hoping for. That's not to say that the Titans are severely lacking in it. Bellona and Cabrakan very good at just running it down and allowing a little bit more free casting from their mid laner, or allowing this Hunter to get a couple of auto attacks a bit more consistently. But the dive potential of the Leviathans, I think, so incredibly strong that the Titans really would have benefited from one more big body on their team.
So, as we start kind of maybe looking into some of the compositions and kind of how some of the gameplay has gone for these teams, Tartarus Titans matchups went a little bit longer yesterday, in towards about the 30 or so minute mark for each of their games. Leviathans have been known to kind of take games a little bit later into the game. Obviously asking you, how good is Leviathan's late game is kind of maybe an easy answer for you there. You got potential double Cthulhu and Atlas, pretty big walls there. How is the Titans' composition fighting up against the Leviathan's late game, Mifflin?
Late game, it's a whole lot of, man, is Descent into Madness down? All right, let's get active. Is it up? Okay, let's back up. And they've got great tools to back up in those situations. Hell gives your team additional movement speed plus sustain to deal with that, first round of aggression from the Leviathans. You've got walls for disengage if you so choose. I'd argue the Titans don't necessarily want to be in that position. You've got disarm to prevent the dodge combo, which is generally blink, auto, one auto, right? That auto cancel for massive DPS. If you can apply that disarm, it makes it very difficult for Daji to get off that immense combo early in an engagement. But late game, I think for the Titans is going to be essentially a cat and mouse game of we got to wait for these resources to go down. Now we can start to play the sustained battle of attrition, that style of pick. Whereas the Leviathans, they've got sustain. It's largely in combat. Cthulhu needs to dedicate Descent into Madness. If you want even more, the Morrigan's got to transform into the Cthulhu and also be in Descent into Madness to find that level of sustain. This is a game that could very easily go very late. I would almost imagine this is a projected like 40 to 50 minute-er.
Well, we'll see if that ends up going to a late game between them. Game number 1 of day number 2 kicks off with the Leviathans and the Titans, and it's Dulcin and Gormizer to bring the action.
We're back. I appreciate everybody's patience. And back into game 1 we go. And so we did have to remake the lobby, but the Leviathans and the Titans, luckily, Gore, didn't get too much done there. And early on in game 1, worth noting, some invades from Cyno, so the early aggression maybe starting to pay off for the Titans. But yes, for clarity, a completely clean slate now in game 1, officially re-beginning between the Leviathans and the Titans. Same compositions, same drafts. Potentially different starts, though, because remember, Zapman completely missed purple XP on attempt number 1 here and had wave pressure pushing against the Leviathans, and the Titans were able to capitalize on that a bit. Looks like different starts from both teams, though, where immediately red buff Stuart and Paul go there, whereas Zap and Panitom go green over to red and then back to purple. And so, should be returning to lane this time, all things equal between the two carries.
Yeah, a lot of the difference now is just going to be Zapman's experience, right? It's going to be a little easier. And I think, even where we were, what was that, like 11 minutes in? It was 500 gold. Like you said, it was a very, very relaxed game compared to maybe what you would expect. But it does give us a little bit of insight and conversations that me and you are having specifically about how that can affect things. A lot of it is going to be, well, now the Leviathans know the Titans want to play a little more aggressive, right? Be in the jungle, stuff like that. We were specifically talking about the chin size talk, and it looks like, at least for now, Sot is going to, if he gets it, it's going to maybe be a little more delayed in the build. And so that one's
chin size, then talisman.
Yeah.
Right now.
And so now it's whatever he's gonna grab first.
Yep.
Get a little, again, maybe a little more bruisery in lane.
Am I wrong? Is that thing called a talisman?
I think it is just a talisman.
90% sure. Doug. Yeah, baby,
Nailed it.
let's go. I thought it was an earring from the from the tiny little
The
picture.
small little hoop.
That's right. Yeah, so potentially a bit different than for Sot. Although
I didn't dislike the chin size, honestly.
No,
I actually
I was
really like
interested.
it into the comp.
I was really interested. Although I wonder, maybe data points, if Sot's thinking, all right, I got chin size, but it actually wasn't doing as much damage immediately as I wanted. I can afford to wait. Second or third item still could come out, just maybe now feeling like didn't need it right away.
Yeah.
Here in game number 1 between these two squads. Did like what we were seeing from Cyno, though. Panitom was remaining a bit aggressive. Sheento had a transformation or two. And it was into the Daji in the one time we saw that transformation early on, Goran. And it's a wealth of opportunity here for Sheento. Daji, one of the best transformations you can have as a Morrigan. Cthulhu, right up there is one of the best transformations you can have as a Morrigan. So picking and choosing those moments, hyper important. Haddix taking some damage from Cyno and Sot. Blue buff respawns. This to be a Titans invade. Cyno just short of confirming the buff. Panitom blinks forward, misses the secure. And so the Titans are indeed able to continue to find pressure, but this time it's over on the blue.
And honestly, I kind of like that shift, right? I think that being able to recognize, like, hey, this Cthulhu, it wasn't as easy of a lane maybe as the Bellona could have had and should have had. And admittedly, Cthulhu is one of those gods that even your worst case scenario is you're just not going to lose lane, right? Like you're going to be able to stalemate most of your matchups. And so I like the idea that Cyno's going to put some pressure over there, and I like how the Leviathans are reacting to this.
Panitom is over on left, but
only level 3.
Yeah, mitigated initiation possibility on the Daji until that Palau comes up. And so you got beads for Paul, beads for Stuart. Considering though the Hellgore, that Hell cleanse around potentially a double Palau, communication going to be hyper important for both the Titans and the Leviathans. All right, group up for this Palau. Don't group up for this Palau. If that's what Sheento ends up doing, you know, beads, cleanse burning, could be easy, could be difficult, depending on how well the Leviathans coordinate.
Well, and it still gives them a little bit of an opening. Granted, it's not as massive of a pull, but like Ronngyu's pull, I think being involved in that and maybe forcing a cleanse early or a beads early in some of those scenarios. Like, there's definitely ways for the Leviathans to force the Titans' CC immunities as much as possible. Granted, some of them are still going to have like the Bellona leap to get out of there, things like that, to maybe help save you for some of those problems. But I do like the way the Leviathans are potentially going to deal with that. I also want to, and just looking more at that Daji, I mean, you know, we talk about it a lot with the Warriors. It feels like a must-ban versus Cubo because there are games where, I mean, just on his back, right? Every single time he gets that Daji, it is insane. And for a long time, it was the Daji Morrigan combo that the Warriors had that just absolutely demolished the league. And I think that Panitom is another one of those players where you have to kind of look at and say, you know what, his Daji usually is good enough that it warrants a ban. Is usually good enough that it is going to command a game. And so I'm keeping eyes on Panitom with heavy interest. And when it gets active, level 5 now, so the Palau's available. It's typically when you can start to expect it, but like you said, with beads and cleanse on Paul, it's not really easy to get things done in mid. Might see a little more heavy-handed focus on the left, or even the right. Bellona, even with the Talisman Tier 2, the Tier 1 shield. Yeah. You are tanky-ish, but not so tanky that it's going to be impossible to kill you. Granted, with a Cthulhu by your side, it's maybe not the power punch that you want on right lane. Heimdallr on the other side gives you some opportunities. And so Stuart might be the one, along with Aror, a little bit sprinkled on there, that just gets bullied for a little bit by the jungle, or they might just play for late game. And, I mean, with a pace like they have so far this game, especially what we saw initially before the remake, I wouldn't be surprised if they keep up this level of aggression, which is to be, you know, essentially none, right? Maybe some invades on occasion. Really looking towards these neutral camps. Mid camps are going to be important in moments like this because that experience is going to maybe set up someone in mid lane a little more, or the junglers. Left side mids and the oracles going over towards Panitom helps give a little bit of experience, but all that farm, it's going to make a difference in the jungle.
Ronngyu caught out here. Plenty of CC for the Titans, and enough to grab first blood. But on the other end, Paul has been jumped on by Sheento.
Wow, what a pull.
The first Palau of the fight, it's going to connect, and it's going to set up for Haddix to return the favor. The Titans found one, but they'll pay for it in blood. 3 down, and the Leviathans trade effectively.
I mean, it's just such a good read on the fight, right? You go in, you have some good aggression from the Titans, but the walls there were preventative, not locking down. They just kind of isolated, made Ronngyu go into a really weird pathing. And unfortunately for Ronngyu, that pathing keeps you in damage a little longer. Good walls by the Titans, but not maybe the extent that it could have been. Meanwhile, Panitom, Sheento, Haddix, the rotation from the solo laner, really good from the Cthulhu, immediate descent into madness, but also the Palau, the pulls that they got, the pickups. You get beads off of Paul, and then all of a sudden, 2 people are locked down. And then it's Knock-Up City, it's Damage Central. I mean, everything you need in that small corridor around the mid-camps. I think just really well played and perfectly fits the exact thing I'm worried about for the Titans. That kind of thing is going to be what you're fighting into all of late game. Yep. That is what their jungle fight is going to look like for the Leviathans. In lane, you can handle that a lot easier. There's a lot more wiggle room. In the jungle, I see those Palaus, I see a Cthulhu, and I think that the CC is definitely going to help the Leviathans a ton.
Man, Haddix has been an absolute stud for this Leviathans team since they added him to their roster. 201 in that fight. And, you know, not the most mechanically intensive requirements in that fight for Haddix. You go big on Cthulhu, but then the shot calling in the zone control, right? Especially in a slim little corridor like that, fantastic. But just such a strong player for this Leviathans team. And this Leviathans team, and Gore, we talked about it a bit in game 1v1 about how the Leviathans, they're so good from fighting behind, up there, the top couple teams in the league at doing that. They can wait until later on in the game, but also fantastic at little skirmishes like that. Anything that requires pin-perfect communication, the Leviathans absolutely on point. Maybe another opportunity here. Paul, my goodness, yeah, you're in some trouble. And talk about communication. That's just a simple collapse from Panitom, Ronngyu, and Sheento, and we'll give the second kill of the game to the Morrigan.
What's even better is it's nothing fancy, right? It's just, hey,
sure isn't.
Paul doesn't have beads. We can pick him up. He can't cleanse himself if he's CC'd. And so all of a sudden it's a lot easier to just walk him down, right? And they only had like 30 seconds, I think, to make a play like that. And you save all of your ultimates, as you mentioned, so that you can make a bigger play on the map.
Bigger play is around the Gold Fury. Aror is here. Remember, a 5v4. Aror's already sent down the ultimate. Ronngyu has been on it with these pulls as well. And now it's Aror in danger. Zapman with his ult. That's got to be the killing blow, and the Leviathans can turn their eyes elsewhere. Stuart is dropped. Aror drops from the heavens and dies off as well, but up into the powwow goes Panitom. He'll crash down, but a stun onto Sot prevents the follow-up. Eagles rally already been used. The Leviathans mopping the floor with the Titans. That is another 3 for none. The Gold Fury still stands.
Yeah.
Leviathan's a bit too low to go for it, but they'll gladly take a 3 for none trade.
That's where you start to have to do some of the SMITE math, right? Which comes in, it's like, well, we stopped the Gold Fury. If it was for just Aror, worthwhile. If you pull some of those ults and it's just Aror, absolutely worthwhile. Losing everybody they did. I mean, Paul into Aror, into Stuart, into Sot, right? Cyno's the only one who gets out alive. Panitom was low, but never gets killed, so no kills for the Titans. They stop the Gold Fury. Those are their positives, but the downside is that extended version of that fight, you lost 4 players.
Yep.
It really does go to show, I think, that they're, well, first off, marching in one by one in a very awkward scenario anyway. The minute that Aror was in trouble, and essentially once he got sent through the realms by Zapman here,
yeah, probably
shouldn't have engaged the rest of the fight, and admittedly, Leviathans brought the rest of that to the Titans' doorstep. But there was definitely a moment where the amount you were getting from stopping that Gold Fury was officially outweighed by the amount of deaths that you ate.
Yep.
And unfortunately now it means the Leviathans have enough of a comfortable lead, right? Not a ton in experience. You know, you see 1 level and a few of the roles equal for the jungle. But it gives them even better map pressure because all of a sudden, hey, they had 30 seconds without 4 of you to defend anything. Yeah, it didn't necessarily lead to a Pyro or a Gold Fury, but that small amount of experience is going to grow even further and further beyond, especially with the gold they got off of it. I mean, what, 2K at this point? I think that they're going to be able to spend a lot of that on items and get a nice lead for the next fight.
This gives you a pretty good indication of maybe where the momentum lies. It's Haddix and Ronngyu with 3 members of the Titans swirling, and it's actually the Titans who end up not really liking what they see in front of them. Now, worth mentioning, I mean, the pressure probably got to be on the Titans at this point, right? I mean, yes, you're behind in the game, but it's plays like this when these games quickly become out of reach. If you say, okay, we're too far behind to go for a Pyro, which Sot would love to steal away, and he's in range to make an attempt at it. It's slowed down by the Leviathans. Sot, just too early, will not steal it away. Maybe over to the Gold Fury, go the Titans. Zapman's alone, but the Bifrost for safety, fantastic and on time. But when I talk about pressure, it's the Titans then saying, okay, we're not loving the Pyromancer fight, we let that one go.
Yeah.
Okay, we're maybe too far behind to fight the Gold Fury, we let that one go. Eventually, it's just simple, it's a simple trajectory for the Leviathans where if the opposing squad just lets too much go because they're not enjoying and liking what they see in front of them, the game eventually gets out of reach. So maybe you're hoping the Leviathans get comfortable with this slight lead, maybe overextend and make a mistake.
And a lot of this, I mean, even at the point where it's like if they follow this trajectory, you start talking about defenses, right? And it's way too early for that, right? 6 towers still standing for both teams.
This would be indicative, I think.
But yeah, if they can put up a fight here or even steal it away for the Titans, that'd be a huge win.
Yeah, you're hoping for a steal. It's got to be Aror and Stuart, but it's a 2 versus 3. So not this big 5v5. Zapman's taking some big damage, but there is no attempt from the Titans and Aror. I'm not sure what Aror can do there. Maybe throw up the wall, see if he can get in range, but doesn't like his odds. then you're starting to wonder, okay, is it worth trading out of support? Even if you don't get the Gold Fury, is it worth it? Of course, if you got it, it'd be very worth for Aror and the rest of the team. But Didn't like his chances there. And so, the 2,000 gold lead becomes 3,500 because the Pyro goes down, the Gold Fury goes down, and the Leviathan's just able to keep that gas pedal pressed just a bit. I mean, it's worth talking about maybe some of the healing later on in the game, Gore.
Yeah.
I mean, Paul is going to get there on this hell. Stuart, of course, any AD carry. And then maybe solo potential from Cyno. But it's not like the Leviathan's comp gets worse as this game goes on. You're potentially going to have 2 massive Cthulhus, 2 massive Dajis later on in the game. It's a very slim opening for the Titans. They've got to find it.
No, and they've been investing their gold well for the Leviathans as well, right? You have to talk about the healing. You see a lot of anti-heal on the other side that I think is very beneficial for the Leviathans, right? You've already got the Divine, the Brawlers, the Tainted Steel. Wouldn't be surprised if we see some more anti-heal coming from either Haddix or Ronngyu in the form of an Ankh.
That's great setup from Stuart. Takes the ult and the beads away from Zapman, but Cyno simply not able to get in range. Now the Titans with numbers against the Leviathans. A slow rotation in. Zapman can take Bifrost from wherever he is, but it'll set him right in the middle of the lane, depending on which one of those he set down earlier on. So if you're a Titans fan, you're happy to see this. A 5-man grouping. You're going to push down a tier 1 tower, the Leviathans. A bit slow on the response. And that'll give you some easy team gold. In the meantime, though, Sheento, wouldn't you expect it? He's way over on the right side of the map, farming things up, keeping that XP and gold per minute high. Nearly 700 XP per minute for Sheento. Just outpacing and nearly 500 gold per minute. 50 or so over Paul. And that's what you expect from the Leviathans mid.
And I like that call from them as well.
Should
especially
be
because,
fine.
Zap's going to be able to get out of here. It's a mile, man. I did not realize how far he was going to go.
Later.
But, you know, you're looking at that. Again, a lot of pressure on Duo. Fury's down. Pyromancer's down. And the only thing you're really losing there if you're the Leviathans, admittedly, it's a safe haven for Zapman, but that tier 1 tower, 500 gold, and very, very well illustrated by the gold difference chart.
Ooh.
It's just a small dent.
Good knockback from Zapman. Simply not enough, though. Cyno is hung out on left. And finally it pays off. Or does it? Because Panitom's here as well. There's some chunk damage. The tier 2 hi-rez feels mighty fine for Panitom now. A gets out from Stuart. And Ronngyu won't even need to tank the tower. Double kill for Panitom, and the Leviathans will call it worth.
I love how that was played by Panitom. It just like the chase down onto Stuart, the Palau to dodge out CC that's coming his way, and then immediately throwing out his chain saying he's going to beat, so I'm just going to dash at him anyway. Gets the beads, continues that chase, like doesn't have to worry about the gap. I mean, it was almost at that point where Stuart would have been like 2 steps too far, and that damage wouldn't have been connecting as easily, and you would have had to chase a little deeper. But gets right on him, immediately chases him down, and just sticks to him like glue. And so now with Stuart falling, unfortunately, there. Yes, you traded out 1-for-1 with Zap, but we've seen how the Leviathans play. Zapman having 1 death on his belt means virtually nothing to this team going into the late game.
If anything, it means like good things.
Yeah, because that means Sheento was doing something else on the map while Zap was dying, right? Somebody is benefiting from it. And this is the point where, like, any of the people out there, like, you know, the old reliable meme for Zap, it's the Heimdallr. I think that you could put this guy down 6 times with no kills on this god, and he's still going to look good on it.
Yep.
And I think that that's what we're going to see. I mean, he almost immediately goes back to lane and is boxing Stuart.
Cyno stunned by Sheento, who will transform into the Daji. Will he get the Palau off? Yeah, so this is the Morrigan Palau you're seeing here. Cleansed out. And the real Palau still there for Panitom just around the corner. Now, Haddix is walled off, but we've already done this fight once this game where Haddix is apparently caught out, and then the Leviathans re-engage after the fact. But this time the Titans have numbers. Triple pull and triple knock-up from Ronngyu. Haddix still being run down, but Sot too far forward. He's stunned and taken down by Panitom. And Panitom still with that ultimate, dashes forward, goes up, chain onto 1, and that'll be a pull and a kill onto Aror.
And now they can either continue their chase. They went wrong. He was so low, but look at Haddix.
Oh, no.
He teleported back in.
Oh, Haddix behind the tier 1 tower now, full HP, and the dive has arrived. Double kill for Sheento. Panitom with another as well. And the Leviathans call 4.
Now, I want to roll this back, and chat, you can talk to me about this as well. Top 3s and the importance of picks and bans. Look at the 2-0-6, 5-0-7, 4-0-7. I mean, you get maybe the best team fight composition in just the 3. I didn't even care what the rest of the team was going to be. I think that the Leviathans are playing it to the note, and more so showing, one, why you never want these 3 to be available at any given time, why this Daji has become and has stuck up towards one of the top bans over the last half of the year. They're playing this comp so well. And the Atlas, I have to give Ronngyu a lot of credit. There was a triple pull in the middle there that, again, just forces a little bit of CC immunity, forces some uncomfort and mispositioning from the Titans.
And you went Mirrodin.
a lot of it is those top 3. It is just so good for the Leviathans having that as a team fight.
What are they? They're the top 3 of the draft for the Leviathans is a combined 11, 0, and 20 right now. That's okay. If you're asking me, 11 of the 13 kills lies with the top 3 of the Leviathans. And fighting on the right side of the map where you know that Haddix is going to be able to simply rotate over.
I mean, you would even call it. We literally saw that fight earlier, and it didn't work out that well.
And you know what? and when we talked about communication from the Leviathans, this is a lot of what we saw in that fight, Gore, where we said, how well can you delay the 2 Palaus? Think about that fight. Sheento transformed early, realized his timer was running out, and he had to use his Palau. And then that second wind pulls in another. And so that was great juggling from the Leviathans using their initiation. This game 1 draft, just so good from the Leviathans. And again, I don't know if you're the Titans, you're feeling like you're suddenly going to outscale this, but you've had no answers.
It was, I think the big standout, at least for me, outside of Ronngyu, I think the front line there, but they focused on getting Haddix out early.
Yeah.
Got Haddix out, and then a teleport to a deep ward right there, and then just that rotation. Again, a lot of that was just how they play the team fight and how well they have it. Teleports back up, all of a sudden, in my mind, it's a lot more confident in any fight. I see a little excursion on right going down, and I trust the Leviathans here.
Panitom can evaporate Cyno with a drop of a hat. Just Haddix who gets the kill, but Panitom does the majority of the damage, and Fire Giant now pulled at the exact 20-minute mark for the Leviathan. Sot close by. You might need a steal here to keep you in game number 1. Remember, this is a best of 5, a bit more room for error for the Titans. And an error has been made by Sot, stepping too far forward. Eagles rally, looks good. Doesn't matter. Another one for the Leviathans. I think the Titans considering draft now for game 2, which is a heavy statement at the 20-minute mark.
And honestly, it's just because that kill on Cyno puts the Leviathans in a win-win scenario. Either with the pacing on the map, specifically with Zap drawing as much attention, Sheento wasn't over here yet, so there were still some Titans scattered on the left-hand side of the map.
My goodness.
And so the options were, we go for fire, and Sot comes in and dies, that's what we see, or we go for fire, and we just get it for free. Like, no matter what, you're getting a Fire Giant, and you're either getting a kill, or you're setting yourselves up for something massive. I think that it's well played. At this point, you probably need a Hail Mary call from the Titans to try and make sure things are a little equal. It's 11,000 gold. They still have 4 towers standing, so a lot of that has been from neutral objectives.
Yep.
You're starting to feel it in items. You see full-on tier 3s that are going to be bought over what the Titans have. And you're seeing team fight differences as well. I think that, we were talking about it earlier, and I said it at the 10 or 12-minute mark, that it felt a little too early to be talking about defenses around the Phoenix line. Now it is probably a little more applicable, and unfortunately,
apparently it was right on time. Apparently you had a good read on the situation. And you know what? With Paul and his build, he's gone Book of Thoth, double defensive items. I'm used to seeing just breastplate.
Yeah, just the one.
But it makes sense that it'd be Paul to go then. Paul was the one who really opened the door to the kind of Book of Thoth, breastplate, kind of defensive item, and then into the rest of the build. So it makes sense Paul's going to be one of the first ones to be double defensive. And then Book of the Dead.
Yeah, that catches me off guard. We haven't seen it in a while.
He's gonna be tough to kill, but he's also 2 levels down. Leviathans hit level 20 on both of their carries right around that 20-minute mark, giving you a good idea of the pacing of this game. And also, I was gonna ask earlier, because Rongyu's had Mirrodin for a while. Normally when a game is going very, very well or very, very poorly, you're buying Emperor's Armor early on in that support build. I was wondering what a Mirrodin is indicative of. But then also goes to the Emperor's Armor anyway. I think Rongyu's feeling himself.
Yeah, this is a team that wants to siege and knows that they have the capability to do so. Again, double Palau gives them a lot of good opportunity to pull people out. I do like the Titans defense, but maybe not as much as I like the aggression from the Leviathans.
Careful, Zap. Careful.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot more conversation for the Titans having the again, narrow corridors, but this time funneling into the Titans, right? All of a sudden, Paul's going to be able to get some free damage out there. Cyno's going to get some damage out there. Easy for Stuart, specifically on a Cernunnos, to get some damage out there, wider abilities. And so it feels a little better for the Titans around some of that defense. With beads up on 4 of the players, Klin's going to be available at the beginning of this next fight as well. Beads down for Zapman now. I think there's definitely a room where the Leviathans honestly maybe just have to get that left tier 2, or sorry, right tier 2, Pyromancer, Fury. Maybe they can continue. I mean, they got a lot of damage down onto that Phoenix in just a small amount of time, but you're going to lose someone. I just have a strong feeling that, yes, you can get it, but it's going to cost.
Man.
And it's just whether or not the Leviathans can really crack the shell that the Titans are going to set up.
I mean, I know it's way too early. I mean, this is really not our job. So I'm trying to do, like, draft analysis here. Because in a world where Cthulhu, Daji, and Morrigan are not all 3 banned out, and you see a Morrigan first picked by the Leviathans, the Titans have to be you have to consider a Daji or a Cthulhu, if not both, with then your 2 return picks. Wild to me that this is what's been allowed to have happen. It's Stuart jumped on by Panitom, and Palau, number 1, the real one. It's been used, and it's double Cthulhu this time, and it's working out just fine for the Leviathans. Phoenix and Aror both crumble. Sot shortly to follow, and at the 24-minute mark, the Leviathans have officially broken the base. And maybe the spirit of the Titans here in Game 1.
I love the call to change that one, that moment, from a double Daji to a double Cthulhu, because what are you trying to do? You're trying to siege. You need that extra tanky body up front, disrupting the team fight, and that's exactly what Sheento gives them.
Paul now jumped on. He's going to have to hope that defense can keep him alive, because Panitom has arrived. The top 3 of the Leviathans, 409, 809, 4011. And it looks like might go one more here. Again, in a best of 5, a bit more room for error, but the Leviathans do not want to make an error in Game 1. Set the tone for the rest of this best of 5. And likely back for one more FG, but you have got great map state, great gold state, great experience state. Titans talking about what they're going to change up for Game 2.
Yeah, at this point, Fury should be maybe not an easy pickup. No, it's going to be an easy pickup. The Titans are backing off. I knew that was a fight. You don't want to take it around purple, maybe. I mean, at this rate, look, it's 18-3. You're almost down 20,000 gold. There's definitely conversations, at least in my mind, it's when you start making the Hail Marys, right? When you're like, hey, you know what, it's 4th and 8, but let's just go for it anyway, because what else is going to happen? The worst case scenario is already kind of arrived for you. But I do think Fire Giant Call coming up soon could be an important one. If you get a good setup here by the Titans, I mean, you pushed up left, pushing up in mid, you're going to have a full team. Teleport's already down for Haddix, so if you can burst Haddix down to the point where he's TKO'd, he's out of the fight for a little bit. But the ults are coming back up, relics, you've got a minute no beads that you can deal with on Panitom. But you're fighting an uphill battle already if you're the Titans. I mean, you're still talking level deficits in almost every single role.
Yeah, I mean,
and so it's that, I mean, it's such a weird balance. The safe, smart call is stay back.
Right. Well, Gore, look,
I like the risky ones.
It's easy for you and I to talk about going for it on 4th and 8. You've got Josh Allen. I've got Joe Burrow. It's ingrained into our brains at this point. Just go for it. We trust
and I mean, I make those decisions all the time. I will admit, I make bad, risky decisions a lot.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the Titans are at a bit worse than 4th and 8 right now. We're 4th and 30. We've had 9 false starts and 3 sacks on this drive, and we're 4th and 99 with the entire field to go.
Yeah. It's this weird balance, right, where it's just like, what are you going to get? Like, all 5 of you in the Titan room, in my mind, Leviathans can just kill a Titan. They don't have to worry about it.
They certainly will, right? But it's also...
But then what do you do otherwise?
Cthulhu. You got this huge AoE out of...
It's one of those scenarios, again, for the Leviathans, it's kind of a win-win. You fight around the FG and go for a Hail Mary if you're the Titans, you probably lose that anyway.
And if it's...
Under the Titan room?
Right.
Probably lose that anyway. But I think you have a better chance here than you do in the jungle.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's also pretty easy to just kill the Titan and not fight.
My initial guess was massive wild hunt from Stu, but if Palau and double Cthulhu is the answer, it's only so much you can hit. Panitom has shredded SOT, and here's your team fight. The Leviathans have controlled all of game one. And decent pushback here from the Titans. The actual Titan is actually not taking that much damage, but the Titans backline beginning to melt. Finally, the crack showing on this defense in a convincing manner. Leviathans take down the Titans in game one.
Yeah, that one, again, they've just put themselves in maybe the best scenario. And a lot of it stems, I mean, we mentioned it, we talked about it, we looked at it, and you could just replay one single fight that opens that up as fully as it does. And it's the second fight around the right mid-camp, right?
Yep.
The first one, that was an overwhelming victory for the Leviathans, but it was an early game victory, right? Those are something that you can usually jump over, find a hurdle. It's going to be a bump, but you can get there.
Yep.
Fight around the Gold Fury was a little more backbreaking for the Titans. That set things to be as distant as they were. But then that second fight around those mid-camps, they go in, they kill Ronngyu a second time, but you lose so much in the process, and that really opened up the map, the rest of the map. Anything that the Leviathans wanted from that point forward was theirs. That was that moment where if you win that fight, maybe you get a little closer to equal, but if you lose it, it gives so much ground over, and I think that was the moment that was truly the backbreaker.
I think it felt simple maybe from the Leviathans straight up out of the draft. They realized, once we
hey, we got Cthulhu, Dashi, and the Morrigan.
And unless my eyes and brain are failing me right now, which is totally possible, those three didn't die even to the end of that game. A fantastic draft and a well-executed team composition from the Leviathans. Game one in this best of 5 to the Leviathans, a couple steps closer to qualifying to the SWC. We'll see if the Titans can retool some things for game 2 coming up next.
The Atlantis Leviathans are now 2 games away from being the first team to qualify to the SMITE World Championships. And if you want to represent the Atlantis Leviathans or just any of your favorite SMITE Pro League teams out there, then make sure to go to shop.hi-rezstudios.com/SPL or shop.hi-rezstudios.com and pick up a jersey brought to us by our good friends over at Skulls. We got one for all of our SMITE Pro League teams out there. So whether your favorite team is the Leviathans, the Dragons, the Bolts, the Valkyries, whatever it may be, pick one of those jerseys up, rep them, take pictures of it, send it over on Twitter, add us on SMITE Pro. Who knows, maybe we can even throw you on the broadcast one day with that one. Or maybe you can even see some of your favorite teams at the World Championships and wearing your favorite jersey. Thank you so much to Skulls for being the merch sponsor for Season 9 of the SMITE Pro League. And in game number 1, the Atlantis Leviathans able to take the victory over the Tartarus Titans. And Mifflin, it really does come down to a lot of, kind of discussions we were having about these early team fights. That early on, you can have these double dodges to kind of get these team fights going. As we transition to the late game, we started seeing the double Cthulhu a little bit more. But really, Sheento kind of just in the base Morrigan form early on, Panitom in this dodgy, really made some early strides to this composition.
Which is surprising considering how heavily base Morrigan had been nerfed recently, but still Sheento able to perform admirably on this pick. I had projected that game would go a lot longer than it did. Both of those compositions were late game leaning, but with the Leviathans taking such a massive lead in the early off the back of like 1 or 2 team fights, essentially pushing themselves to like 7-1, 7-2 at one point. It really was the Leviathans' MO to just run it down early. Let's group up, let's continue taking these fights and leverage this lead while we got it. And the Leviathans do so very, very well. The Tartarus Titans were not given the opportunity or even a brief moment to recenter, find their footing. Instead, it was constant action from the Leviathans posing difficult questions on cooldown. Are you ready to defend the Gold Fury? You better be, or we're going to get Gold Fury. Are you ready to defend the Pyro? You better be, or we're going to get that. And with the Leviathans generating that much threat on map, it was a very quick snowball for them. It did still go a bit longer, but the Leviathans' insane teamfight composition didn't really fall off come late, especially considering the lead they had established. If I'm the Tartarus Titans, I'm probably considering banning out, if not the Morrigan, at least the Cthulhu. Haddix has been playing this god ad nauseum, non-stop, win rate upwards of 70% at this point. Maybe target that one. Otherwise, I think the Titans could likely let that draft through again and then look a little bit more so towards early aggression. Not my recommended start, though. I mean, I wouldn't be letting all that through.
Yeah, so when we came through the picks and bans, we saw Cthulhu, Dodgy, Morrigan. We're like, wow, that's a really strong top 3. Also note, none of those 3 died through the entirety of that game. 5-0-11, 8-0-12, 4-0-14 for the top 3 of the Leviathans in their picks, and, well, the top 3 for their KDAs respectively, as well. And you're right to say that Haddix probably should be removed from this god. 30 times that he has gotten to play this god, 73.3% win rate on that god. It is a successful pick for him. It's a successful pick for the Leviathans in general. I mean, you dial back even towards Season 8, as we were starting to go through the tail end of that Phase 3 out there. Morrigan, Cthulhu, very popular. Woe was one of the only teams still running it, even when it was, quote-unquote, not so good anymore. It was the Leviathans. They just know how to run with this pick. I think you can't give them a combination of any of those three gods anymore beyond this point. I think it might just need to be taken away entirely.
Yeah, I mean, but when you look at what Hell brings to the Titans draft in the previous game, double Daji is not nearly as threatening as it would be against just about any other selection. Having the ability to go towards that cleanse as consistently as Paul was able to kind of dissuaded Sheento from even transforming into the Daji for the most part. It was a whole lot more double Cthulhu. So if you have to let it through, maybe deal with the Cthulhu. If you can't ban out 2 of the 3, or you can only ban out 1, I'm probably looking at Haddix's pick.
Well, we'll see if that one does get taken away as we jump into picks and bans for Game 2. And we didn't have to wait very long there, Mifflin. Cthulhu, the first ban for the Titans, who did opt to take the first pick selection this time around. Leviathans are still going to stick with at least their couple of targeted bans immediately. Naja from the Leviathans. Titans will take 2 of the 3 pieces away there, so both Cthulhu and Daji banned away, and still a little bit of focus from the Leviathans by banning out Paul's set.
Yeah, I wonder if the Titans now shift up the bans, start targeting towards mid lane. Vulcan, still an incredibly strong pick, could be one that the Titans decide to take for themselves early on. The Leviathans now have to make a value statement. Are we more worried about support? Are we more worried about mid? Support seems to have been the answer. I would have expected the Leviathans to leave Guardians available here. If Yamoja makes it through, you get Maui for yourself. If Maui makes it through, you probably get Yamoja for yourself, right? Instead, now it's a simple answer. The Titans can go ahead and take the Vulcan, and we'll see whether or not Ronngyu has got a Maui, because we know Aror has.
Might not get to see the Maui from the Leviathans at least. Instead, it's a Ymir early selection in the top 2 of the Leviathans with that Vulcan on the opposite side. And then a Cupid. So we're just going back to what was so powerful throughout the majority of Phase 3. Ymir Cupid got a lot of pressure in lane, a lot of kill potential out of this lane. And it seems the Leviathans are going to just stick with what's been working so far throughout the phase, not really needing to make any change-ups here, Miff.
No, just a very standard aggressive kill lane already locked in for the Leviathans. It's a bit of a departure from the previous strategy, which was have the 4-man core support and center and right side of the map play together, leave Zapman alone on an island. Now on Cupid, that's a pick that you're going to want Ronngyu to facilitate a little bit more so towards the early game, play that laning phase a bit more aggressively, and you've certainly got the potential to do it with both of these selections. And then once you do get to that late game, you can at least rely on Zapman to keep you topped off in some of these team fights. But in going towards these 2, it does leave up what has quickly become one of Aror's best picks. I know it's hard to say that after one set, but considering how dominant a performance it was in that one set and how highly he's prioritized it now yet again, Maui locked in for the Titans, I'm thinking that this could be a constant fixture for the Titans going forward.
If you weren't there earlier, 2-0-23 for his first 2 games on this Maui pick for Aror. So we're going to see if he can keep up his 100% win rate on this god. So far, Maui picked 3 times throughout this tournament. Only he's lost 1 of those 3, and that was in the set against the Kings yesterday with the bolts, I do believe in that one. Cernunnos rounds out the top 3 for the Titans. The Morrigan still over here for the Leviathans, though. So Sheento not going to stray away from that pick since it is left available.
Yeah, not exactly many great transformations for this Morrigan just yet. I'm looking at everybody on board, and there's nobody that Sheento is thinking to himself, man, that looks pretty good for me. So the Leviathans might be able to dig in deep, find something like that for themselves, or with the Titans still sitting on their jungle selection, generally that's where we're going to see that value as well. Double Gilgamesh has a whole lot of value, so the Titans take that off the board. I wonder where they go next. Maybe you're concerned about the Susano, that Panitom's been playing very, very well. We know that Sheento has transformed into that pretty consistently when it was available in the past, and Double Typhoon can be incredibly dominant in a team fight. Susano also has pretty decent matchup in a Vulcan. You're able to gap close very, very well. Backfire, sure, might be able to create a little bit of space, but a little's not enough when Susano's running you down.
Well, but the Tartarus Titans still one more ban to them. Thor, Athena, banned by the Leviathans. Titans take away Lancelot and Gilgamesh. Lancelot's not one that we've been seeing too much from the Leviathans. I mean, when you kind of think of this one, first player that comes to my mind is Captain Twig on the Kings. That's really been making this god kind of have its comeback over into the jungle, but will be taken away with the Gilgamesh from Panitom. So the question is, where does Panitom go? Well, he still has quite a few options. As far as jungle is concerned, sure, those two picks, or those two and the Thor have been banned, but still feels like there's quite a lot of options over towards Panitom. Anything that really kind of maybe sticks out to you that could help round out this composition, Myth?
I'll stick with the Susano prediction. I think it's very strong into the top 3 from the Titans. The only one that might make it a bit difficult is the Guardian. Maui can pull you during your combo, that first ability, 3-parter, disrupt that pretty well, but otherwise, great ability to gap close on a Cern and Vulcan. Neither Cern nor Vulcan have essentially got the CC immunity to deal with Typhoon inherent to the kit, so you're probably forcing those beads pretty consistently throughout the early game. And if one Susano's forcing beads, a secondary Susano could very well force the life immediately afterward. So, the Leviathans, no surprise here. Panitom with his back against the wall goes to one of his favorites.
And it has been a pick that has worked very well for Panitom in the past. A couple of undying games, some very long win streak, or very long kill streaks on that god specifically. Also sitting at almost a 64% win rate in nearly 50 games that he has played this god as well. So definitely something Panitom is comfortable for. So for the Titans, it goes back over to them now. Still need jungle, still need solo. With how many bans have already been allocated throughout the jungle against Panitom, and now having this Susano kind of add into there. Almost makes you wonder where Cyno will go. We saw him go to the Chaac in Game 2 yesterday. Still a couple of other warrior-based assassin or warrior-like assassins that can go over to that road. Maybe an Osiris, maybe an Ronngyu. I know that that was something that the Tartarus Titans were really kind of leaning towards a little bit later towards at least Phase 3.
Yeah, of the auto attack in your face style junglers, I think I would lean towards Ronngyu just being another source of AoE CC for the Titans to facilitate the pulls from Maui. Could go a long way. Beats burning, got to be on the mind of the Titans right now because Maui doesn't exactly do it on his own. I was going to say, I think Chaac actually has a pretty decent matchup here as well. Disruption on channeled abilities from Susano, massive AoE to deal with this Morrigan once she's in that stealth, and just the ability to disrupt what could be some wombo combos. You see the Morrigan transform into Susano, and you could just Thundercall pretty quickly, try and stop that combo from following through. So a pick that we've seen once before, the Chungle, in the previous set, does have some success. Will be sacrificing a bit of that early game presence. Chaac really needs some itemization before his damage output is enough to threaten on his own. And because of the nature of Chaac's CC, not exactly the strongest ganks on his own either. But it does at least bring a bit of that beads burn potential, has a good deal of self-sustain, and a Chaac with a lead in the early does have the potential to run the map. I'm still struggling to come up with like the absolute reason you're going towards Chaac consistently, but I trust Cyno to perform at least as well as he did in the previous set.
I mean, again, it kind of goes back to the conversation I had with Aror yesterday, which is just, he trusts Cyno to go with a comfort pick in these situations. Chaac seems to be something that Cyno does feel comfortable on in that regard. But along with the Chaac, it is a Bellona for the Tartarus Titans, so double warrior coming out of the jungle and the solo for there. A very physical heavy composition on that side of the map at the very least. Then you have the Vulcan, Maui, Cernunnos to the other end. But talk to me a little bit about this Nike that was a 10th pick for the Atlantis Leviathans. Typically, we saw a lot of Nike when like Double Hunter was big, because you can throw out the barrier, block off 2 different forms of that damage by blocking those auto attacks off. Seems to have kind of fallen out, but we keep seeing her kind of pop in. How does this Nike kind of work with what the Leviathans have drafted so far?
Space creation tool, dive potential, that's all there, but the safety that we used to associate with Nike, that secondary HP shield with some of the itemization changes in Season 9, namely around Sunder in particular, doesn't exactly exist. Sunder just deals with Nike, and that's the honest-to-goodness truth about it. And when you look at the support selection from the Titans, you've got a Heavenly straight up built into your kit. 25% movement speed to anyone affected by the AoE of that teleport. I'm not going to say the names of his abilities because they're all incredibly difficult to pronounce, but...
The Zoomy Puddle.
Yeah, Zoomy Puddle, sure. When he drops that is 25% movement speed afforded to the rest of your team, which in a situation where you are likely to want to pick up a Heavenly regardless because there's a Cupid on the other side, you don't necessarily need to go towards that nearly as consistently. Opens up one of your relic slots. Sunder has already been on the rise insofar as stock price recently. I'm expecting maybe 1, maybe 2 Sunder pickups from the Titans. Will make it very, very difficult for this Nike to maneuver in some of these late game team fights.
Well, we'll see if the Tartarus Titans can bounce themselves back in game number 2 and potentially push us to what could be a game 4. But before we got to get to that, we got to jump into this one with Dulcet and Gore.
That's right, a win here from the Titans guarantees at least 2 more for the Leviathans already going to get us on set point. And well, not World Championship point, World Championship birth point, I guess, for the Leviathans. Look, the Titans gore, they've checked box number 1. They have not given over Morrigan plus Daji and Cthulhu to the Leviathans.
Yes.
That is immediately
It's a big win.
a big win. But they did give over Morrigan plus Susano and Nike, and admittedly a very different combination of 3 picks than we got in game 1.
Yeah.
You still got severe 1v1 potential with the Susano, and if it ends up being something like a double Nike, you got 2 massive health shields, 2 big AoE slows. Clearly a different looking team fight. I don't know if the Leviathans have to detract too much from what they did in game 1.
No, I think a lot of the maybe the essence is there. Definitely changes a lot though, right? When it comes down to how disruptive a Cthulhu is in a fight versus literally anybody else in the game, I think Cthulhu just gets the disruption factor win, period.
Agreed.
Right? I mean, that ult is so solid for that exact reason. I do think that Haddix, I mean, look, we talked about him a lot last game. I think for good reason. I think we're probably going to mention him a good fair amount this game as well. Mechanically, really, really solid player, but like map-wise, I think that has really been one of the benefits that the Leviathans have got from picking up Haddix is the rotations that you get out of him. And I think this Nike can rotate just as early as he saw him doing on the Cthulhu, but have maybe an even stronger impact.
Now, with Cyno over in mid, you'll be able to put some damage into Sheento. And I do want to talk about Cyno on this Chaac jungle, and we will in a moment. Quick mention to Aror, had Sunder in game 1. Ultimately, didn't really matter, didn't really help. The Leviathan's too far ahead. Sunder might get some extra value in this game with Haddix and that big health shield, and potentially a double Nike in a team fight. Now, Saad has got good pressure on Haddix here, and Haddix got to be careful.
Some massive slows.
Yeah, one big rotation from Saad here could find himself a solo kill. Both will sustain it, both will do just fine. And so that's my mention of the Sunder. I think it gets some good value for Aror here, but I do want to talk about Chaac jungle for Cyno. And you know what?
He won with it yesterday.
Sometimes you'll see these SEC players, they'll come up to the SPL. Now, I know everyone, Cyno's been there and done that, been on the world stage, won it. You wonder, though, sometimes, like, all right, they play certain things in the SEC. Are they going to keep playing that at the SPL, or do they slow down a bit, play the meta stuff? Cyno says, nah, I'm playing exactly what I was playing in the SEC. It worked then, and we'll see if it works now. Decent ways to combo with Paul on that Earthshaker.
I mean, that is something we saw not just yesterday, but I think a lot at Masters. Mm-hmm. And we heard from the Titans yesterday, I think it was Aror who had said just like, you know what? If Cyno says that he wants to play this, then we're going to let him play that. We want him to be comfortable because that's the most important factor for him being able to find the success. And I think that we got to see that work out pretty well with this exact combo, right? The Vulcan, as you highlight, but with the Maui as well. The pulls, the CC that you're going to get from Aror, theoretically with the Sunder as well, even onto the front line, plus factoring in the giant burst damage from a mid to late game Vulcan, and then just a nice giant AoE silence, giant AoE slow that you can bring from Cyno. Means that you're going to have some decent setup. The downside is, again, and very much what you said, you've got a lot of success, and some of that you can strip and take away if you're the Leviathans.
That's a funny interaction. Panitom teleports to where Aror was in the moment, and then chases him down after the fact. Simply caught out was Aror there. In the meantime, I'm laughing at the interaction, but it's the Leviathans grabbing first blood. I guess luckily for the Titans, that extra gold lands largely on Ronngyu. But still, now a slower start from the Titans in their duo lane.
Yeah, I think that that's something that, I mean, even given the pace of last game, that just feels like it's going to be a little worse for you. Maui still has a lot of good CC, though. I don't expect it to really injure Aror. But how many of those can you get in a game, right? That you're going to be able to afford to that level. And so I think that's going to be some of the struggles that the Titans have to deal with here. And the problem really is that mentally you kind of have to be a little shut down, right? After game number 1, I think that you have to have a very, I would almost say explosive performance, like the first couple of kills that you could maybe try to pick up, excluding now First Blood since the Leviathan scooped that. If you could get something that really gives you a punch behind your draft and just a punch on the map, it's going to be maybe necessary to get some of that morale back up. Granted, they're good at shrugging things off. I mean, you mentioned it, best of 5, you lose game number 1. And that's where that discussion of like game 1, game 2, and in this kind of setting, I think this is going to be the one. Admittedly, that is the most important for the Titans, right? If you win this, you right a ship that feels like it might have been swaying too far to the side, maybe starting to sink. You patch up the hole, everything goes fine. You have chances to reset for game 3, game 4, maybe a game 5 if necessary. If you go down in this game, if it's a 2-0, you are in a much more straight up terrible position, right? It's worse off for you. It's uncomfortable to try and play back from. You have to make drastic kind of changes. And so I think that playing this, not only at this pace, feels pretty okay for them. You want to get Paul online and wait for him to have damage. But realistically, like the Chaac, while he can get active early on, I don't think you're going to find him in scenarios where he's going to just out DPS the Susano. No. And so I like the fact that they're kind of playing it slow, trying to figure out what pace they want to go for. They just can't afford any more kills like the one onto Aror. They have to make sure that it kind of stays steady.
Yeah, no big mistakes. That's what we saw. And it was a hard enough composition to fight against in game 1 for the Titans, and then a couple big mistakes. At even gold and experience, was hard enough to fight into that composition in game 1. Much less from 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 gold behind, which is probably why we saw the Titans slow things down. We don't want to fight into this Pyro, this Gold Fury, because we're behind, and their composition is so strong. And so I agree, Gore. I'm looking for setup around Paul. You got a big Eagles rally, big knock-up, silence from Cyno, Aror with some good setup. On the Maui, which has seen some success here this weekend. I know Agro's been following along on Twitter. We can make Twitch chat jealous for a second. We saw Agro just a few moments ago. He was here in studio.
And quite legitimately made my day better.
It was great. It was fun because I didn't expect it. He just walked in the room. We said hi to him. We talked to him. Don't worry, everyone. He is happy, healthy. I was going to say wealthy and wise because that's the full saying, but I don't know his financials. He is happy, though, to be watching Maui.
So I realize you stopped at the wealthy, but didn't carry on to the wise.
Well, no, because I'm certain he's wise.
Okay. Yeah, that one because it was a given. Okay.
Right, that one's just known. But no, he's in a good spot, and his first God design's been seeing some play, and his first God design will grab an assist here as Paul has dropped the Earthshaker on Ronngyu. So now both supports that are slightly susceptible to being caught out have been caught out in the early goings here of game number 2. And that'll be a purple buff invade on top for the Tartarus Titans. Is it also a Gold Fury call? No, not for now. And maybe not for the next couple of minutes. A clean get in, get out kill for the Titans.
And I like little things like that. First off, it goes on to Paul. Perfect position for that kill to start giving him a little bit of a lead. And I'm not even looking for experience. I don't care too much where his level is. Admittedly, yeah, if it's higher than Sheento's, great. But I'm looking at itemization and him specifically getting to the point where he feels like he's online, has the damage necessary to find more kills like that, right? To be the carry that this team probably needs to be able to make things work out. And I think that what you've got from Cyno and Aror and what we're going to see from this point forward is just setup machines for Paul, right? And then when Stuart joins the fray, it's going to be setup machines for Stuart as well. But I really like the route that they're going for this.
Yep.
It really is an echo of some of the success they got yesterday.
Now, I expect to see a bit more of what we just saw in mid later on in the game. Luckily for Paul, itemization not quite there for Panitom, just the Jotuns, but still half health Paul with one rotation. Got the beads off as well. Once Aegis is there for both Panitom and Paul, if Panitom ends up choosing Aegis, but really I'm talking about Paul and his Aegis. Should help him out later on in the game, but getting on to Vulcan has been an issue for some. Ronngyu into Shards of Ice. That'll avoid the Earthshaker. And now it's a dive in from the Leviathans. They have found Paul, but Ronngyu has died on the other side of this fight. This one a 1-for-1, avoiding big mistakes. That's what we talked about for the Titans here.
Yeah.
Maybe caught out on one side, but trade out a kill on the other. So you lose Paul, you get Ronngyu. And the Leviathans dive in, was successful onto Paul. That's something to note as this game goes on. It worked out there in mid.
Yeah.
Going to keep working out throughout the game.
It's just, it's when those trades end up falling the way they did. Nice stun from Side. And he's got a little bit of backup on the way. I don't know that this is going to result in anything too crazy. I don't know. The Morrigan's here.
So does Haddix. Also has backup. No Eagles rally. Sheento will send out a stun. Yes. But the slight dash from SOT, enough to get out. Now, I mentioned some damage because Haddix does have a bit. Rune Forged on the Nike will help set up for not only himself, but the rest of the team. And Nike can supply a sneaky amount of damage in some of this
Surprising
setup.
amount.
And, you know, this is kind of the new age solo lane build on some that feel like they've got decent amounts of CC. You just slam Rune Forged, you dive in, and you hope the rest of your team is able to find the follow-up on the back end. And, you know, it makes sense. That's something you'd expect SOT to do. Something you expect Cyno to do. We saw a bit of it from Variety yesterday. And of course, you expect Haddix to play that play style.
And honestly, I like the fact that he's playing aggressive. I think, actually, the first time he's played the Nike for Leviathans, which, I mean, granted, we only have phase 3 to look at for that, so maybe not that big of a deal. Nice little knock-up from Aror.
Look good.
And honestly, it makes the wall feel a little less negligible, or more negligible.
Wow, so there maybe actually is indeed some follow-up on that, and there is. The Titans have picked Ronngyu. Paul desperately running. Haddix misreads, or maybe he was just trying to escape, and Paul will escape. And that Earthshaker, fantastic. That's setting up a kill, really following up, because I'm thinking a double pullback from Aurora. All right, looks nice. What are you really getting?
Yeah.
Well, you're getting a kill because the rest of the Titans were close by. Now it's a Pyromancer pull. Sheento from over the wall will not get the steal. The Titans controlling the game in the first 11 minutes. Pull themselves 1,000 gold ahead.
Honestly, and again, love where they're being active, and specifically this one a lot more than the last time, right? Last time, Ronngyu for Paul, that's not a trade that I really want to make most of the game. Early on, it's something you can maybe talk about, but it's just not going to feel as worthwhile.
Ooh, that's early beats. Can Panitom get in range? This is not going to be a stun. Sheento drops nothing because he jumps in. Stuart had the wild hunt, is what I misspoke on just a moment ago. And so that's a nice dive back in for the Leviathans. At least pull one back. And also could increase their advantage. So it's a well-timed dive that turns into a Gold Fury pull. And look at the Titans there. Not here, not close by, but there is a 3-pronged collapse coming in from the mid lane. Gold Fury will drop. This is a 4 versus 3. Cyno will initiate, misses the knock-up and the silence onto Panitom. Maybe a red buff invade on the back end, but all in all, an equalizing type of play from the Leviathans. Gold Fury +2.
And well played by Panitom, not only securing the red buff, but dodging out on Cyno's ult. I mean, look, that's a massive ult in the jungle to be able to dodge out on. Granted, is it that fancy? No, it's he just uses his movement abilities to get on out of there. But it's little things like that, I think, that so far have showcased why the Leviathans have kept this game pretty much equal and even, despite, I would argue, some smart plays coming from the Titans, right? Really good dive, good focus from the Titans, but you can see, looking at this draft, what their goal is going to be. There's still a little more leniency on the Leviathans for who's going to be a carry, and that opens up, I think, more conversations for them. I mean, that left side expanse showcases exactly why, right? You get a nice transformation into the Nike, plus a collapse onto Stuart under the tower, and then you've got so many people over here. It's a very easy swing to a Fury. Whereas if you're the Titans in that kind of scenario, Zap gets onto the tower, you might be able to heavy commit to something like that, but it's going to be a lot more Paul heavy, Stuart heavy, right? Like Cyno's going to be able to get a little out there. And I think that the Leviathans are playing this well.
Oh, Ronngyu threw up the wall and Stuart dashed right into it. Panitom with the knock-up. He's got the damage and another one for the Leviathans. Ronngyu continues to chase. Another wall, 2 for 2, and another kill for the Leviathans. And the dual lane swept from the map. I was actually about to call a mistake from Zap earlier on. Used his beads to secure the purple buff of the Titans. I thought that might bite Zap. But the Leviathans very, very quick to rotate over, force Stuart into Aurora into an awkward position. And now 2 more kills drop, and the Leviathans have put plenty of pressure over on left.
And I actually really love that, because where's their pressure been? It's been on Paul, and it's been on Stuart. Where are the two that are going to be the win condition for the Titans? It's Paul, and it's Stuart, right? Maui can do everything in the world, but with no follow-up or follow-up from someone who's behind, it's not going to be the same punch as otherwise, and what we got to see a lot yesterday in the Titans game. So I like where the Leviathans are putting their presence. And admittedly, you know, it comes down, you had mentioned it, to a lot of the same things, but this Susano is being played well by 2 people on the map. I mean, that's such a good transformation from Sheento. And he just plays the assassin the way that you need to in that kind of scenario. Gets a good kill onto Cyno. And that's the same problem that the Morrigan brought with the Daji. It's the same thing with the Cthulhu, right, what we saw last game, to the point where I'd almost rather deal with the Daji Cthulhu on the Leviathans and ban the Morrigan just to limit some of these plays from Sheento.
Yeah, pre-beads from Sheento, really nice there to avoid the majority of Cyno's ultimate. So now Chaac jungle has fallen a bit behind. You know what? I was giving the Titans credit. You know, I said checkbox number 1. It's not giving over the exact crazy composition that the Leviathans had in game 1. Unfortunately, the goalposts may have moved to your point there, where you're still giving a Morrigan plus a high-octane jungler to the Leviathans, and Sheento can play it all. Then checkbox number 2 was no big mistakes, and we hadn't seen any.
Yeah.
The last couple of minutes started to open up that conversation, though. The duo lane was 4 of, at the time, 5 kills that the Leviathans had. Now one on to Cyno, slightly being caught out. This is where the Leviathans make their money.
And having, what, 3 of these now feel like they're just positioning and nothing else. I mean, for Stuart, you got chased down one of those kills, right? You couldn't have been in a better position. You were under your tower. There's not much else you could do. For one of them, he is caught out, no beads, things like that. Cyno just now caught out. And so it is interesting to see where this shift is. And even more so, I mean, just looking at the map right now, there's 3, almost 4 Titans on the left-hand side of the map once Paul enters this side of the jungle. And yeah, you've got the obelisk over here. There's a pyromancer spawning, the fire giant's over there. I mean, if you go for Zap, if 4 people or 3 people show up on the map there, you're guaranteed giving away a pretty big neutral objective. And so I like the positioning and kind of the rotations that we're seeing out of the Leviathans more. It makes sense to me, given the map state. Now with the Fury respawning, you can see a mass migration over towards Zap.
Gotta get a kill onto Zap here. You're sending 3 underneath the tower. Zap delays, Zap dashes away, but Aror with range finishes off the kill, and it was necessary. Zap nearly escapes it all. Haddix running down the other side of the fight as well. So both carries cleaned up. Now you got a 4v4 over and duo. Aror will swing right into the shards of ice. Haddix pops the ultimate early in the fight, slows down the Titans on their back pedal, but here comes Panitom. Double knockup, and Sot again has traded out. So again we stand at 2 kills apiece. Maybe more legs for the Leviathans on the back of this fight. In goes Sot.
Yeah, he gets a stun onto Ronngyu, but with Haddix here, I mean, as long as Panitom gets some damage, once his cooldowns are back, they can keep this fight going.
Sot and Cyno, they're feeling good. Ronngyu, he's going to get chased down. Haddix jumps out again as well.
Good
Paul would love to be in range to finish off these kills. We'll take a deep breath. Neither team heavily worse for wear, though the Leviathans lose both of their carries to the Titans. Yeah. Losing Stuart, yes, but then Aror was the second kill in that last fight. So a combined 1 and 6 for the Titans duo lane. But opening the door now to this Gold Fury pull. The SOT does not have Eagle's Rally and likely won't have it here. Cyno is low around the Oni Fury.
This is risky.
Zapman close by. The Titans haven't dropped it. Cyno uses the ult! And Haddix has finished off the kill. The Titans do get the Oni Fury. But can Sot get out? Has to. Dashes away. Won't take the pull back from Aror. Slightly messy there from the Titans, but do get what they came for.
And again, a victory like that, it's still, I mean, look, it's slight, but it's in their favor at that point. Given the deficit they were at, that is still a very, very great fight. First off, the Gold Fury helps equalize the gold. That in and of itself feels really solid. 3 for 2 total in terms of kills, but you trade out jungle, carry, support for the, like you said, the carries, the backline for the Leviathans makes it a little, I want to say a little more in favor, just given the nature of what Cyno and Aror are doing in this game. Maybe a little in favor of them. But ultimately, it's that Gold Fury that helps really teeter it over the edge. Well played. I think really well responded to by them as well. Sot being able to continue a chase alongside Cyno, despite the fact that it felt like the numbers advantage was still there for the Leviathans, and maybe the just whole advantage was there for them. And they managed to play pretty well on the map. They got a tier 1 tower plus the Fury. So a huge chunk of gold that really helps, again, stabilize the ship that felt like it was rocking too much.
Man, Cyno has been throwing these ultimates out
left and right.
Yeah, without any concern. That was an attempted chase down onto Sheento, transformed into Panitom. So we've seen a lot of the Susano transformations. And now really, Gore, for the first time in the last, well, I guess, game and a half, that's all we've played in this set, Titans feeling more confident around a Pyromancer. They're going to pull it in the face of the Leviathans again. The last fight was messy, a 2 for 2. Titans lost 1 on the Oni Fury. What are they going to lose here? Oh, that could be big. The Earth Shaker confirms the Pyromancer and sends some damage in towards Panitom. That'll force the Leviathans back. But Zapman on his rotation over from duo.
Yeah, this could be big. I mean, just the Fields of Love alone feel really solid, but they're going to go for more.
Well, there is more. There's more to be had. Ronngyu tosses up the wall. Cyno forced to dash away. Wild hunt from Stuart. Buys some time. Paul's still here. Now Zapman
He's
with
getting
potential to get collapsed on. Paul does not have Earthshaker. Used it on the Pyromancer. Only halfway back. The tug of war around these objectives. Assad is teleported in behind the Leviathans. That's a blink forward from Cyno. Sot close by as well. Paul still waiting on his ult. So is SOT. Maybe a chase down onto Haddix. That'd be a slow, slow burn. Titans, again, maybe slightly ahead there, Gore. They lose a roar, but grab an objective.
Tug of war is maybe the best phrase. I like that you use that to describe the way the games have been going, because that is the feel of this Haddix with a deep teleport. They're actually looking for more.
Well, Cyno has almost no mana and maybe needed the assistance of a roar, but really it's SOT now who needs it. Earthshaker drops on the tanks and doesn't get that much damage, but Paul still something to say on the back end of this fight. Wall will crumble from Ronngyu. These are tense, tense moments, and no one will die. And Gore, I was waiting to see what everyone on the Titans was going to buy for their second relic. Really, it's only up to Aror. Gets Bracer. I was wondering if we were going to see a Phantom Shell pickup for anyone on the Titans, because the walls have been brutal from Ronngyu, in a good way for the Leviathans, in a bad way for the Titans. No Phantom Shell, though. Cyno can get out, Sot can go up and over, Aror, I suppose, can disengage as well. But these carries, if caught out by a wall, maybe in some trouble.
That's where Maui comes in,
yeah,
right?
Maui,
because
you're right.
Aror gives them that capability. I mean, you know, Paul, Stuart, I mean, even with a good dash, one wall does not matter for the Cernunnos. It can absolutely lock you down. All of a sudden, this Maui being able to just say, hey, stand here, and you will get out of there. Yep. Admittedly, there's a lot that still has to go on around you to make sure that happens. With the burst that we've seen from the Leviathans, it can be very dangerous. But once his beads are up in 50 seconds, you have your Aegis. You've got things to buy you time in those kind of scenarios to help get you out of there. So I do think that the Titans, like you said, maybe it's risky, specifically for the carries, but they've got that capability. And honestly, with the way things have been going, while they've been devastating, most of the walls have been locking away some of the frontliners, not really locking down the backliners too often, and giving the Leviathans, admittedly, tankier targets to try and go on. And I think a lot of the damage that we'll see from them, but really maybe the reason their kills have stagnated a little bit here is because it feels like there's been a lot of let's get Cyno, let's get Sot, let's get Aror. Nobody's touching Paul or Stuart too much.
You know, it's that's the Ymir story, right? Maybe the Maui story here for Aror is I'm gonna get caught out a lot, but the rest of my team is going to be feeling okay. Certainly for both teams, that's been the case. So things now tense in Game 2 of this best of 5. And Gore, you already set the stage earlier on, but to just recontextualize how different things can look. I've always talked about Game 2 in a best of 5 being the most important. But just because of the way the set looks after the fact, given different results, either we're guaranteed going 4 or Leviathan's 1 game away from guaranteed going to the SMITE World Championships. Cyno will use his beads over in mid. That's just a freeze from Ronngyu. So at the moment, Ronngyu happy with that trade. Fields of Love down from Zapman as well. That doesn't force anything out except a backpedal. 5v5 in mid, while a Primal Fury lurks over to the left.
This is such an awkward engage state for the Leviathans.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I think you've got really good teamfight potential. I do think engage may be a little better for the Titans. I mean, Maui brings heaps of it, but then you also have the Bellona. But realistic, and the Chaac, actually, thinking about it, they've got a lot of good engage for the Titans. But it's so awkward because if you go in for a fight, and we've kind of seen this, all it takes is one pick to really set things up.
See, this is what I was wondering about, talking about Phantom Shells, things like that. Paul, a wall goes behind him, and it's forced to use the ultimate. What are you going to do against 2 Typhoons? There's not much you can do. And the Leviathans have cleaned up a kill onto the Titans mid laner, but Sot has been a force all game long.
That is what you expect from the Titans to happen, is, okay, you know, the fights have been pretty even. Let's see what happens. Oh, Paul goes big. That's what gives the Titans their advantage. Sheento did it better this time around. And again, it's that transformation, exactly what you say. He's playing this Susano maybe a teensy bit better. I mean, 3-0-7 is hard to argue against, but 6-1-3, yeah, they're doing great.
Just fine.
But I do have to give, I think, credit where credit's due, because there's so much about that could have gone wrong that they time so well for the Leviathans. And it's on the 2 Typhoons, right? Immediately, one into the knockup, another into a second knockup with that damage for a double kill. I mean, there's not much you can do, especially because Paul had to use the beads for the freeze to deal with the wall. The Aegis was already down. I mean, you can see them 3 seconds apart in the cooldowns, and it's just because Ronngyu, as you had highlighted, sets up so much just to start that. And you know that you're not safe under the Tier 1. We're 25 minutes into the game. That Tier 1 means nothing to the Leviathans frontline. And so you have to use your relics there, or you're dead immediately. But then your relics are down, and Susano's both have their ult. So all of a sudden, it becomes a very easy collapse. Cyno tries to play Savior, but there's only so much a Chaac can do in a scenario like that, and that's one of the downsides of having the Chaac in the jungle, is your silence is nice, but what else can you do after that other than the slow? And so it's a really easy to pick up, and unfortunately, Sot was in the middle of that rotation when the double kill happens.
Yep.
You're not getting out of there at that point, right? It's a 5-on-1, 4-on-1, while maybe one goes to zone. Leviathans just really read the map in that scenario well. And the downside of a pick, especially at this point in the game, but in a moment like that, in the middle of the map, is anywhere on the map is free reign from that point forward. You've got a numbers advantage. And that's just with 1 pick, let alone 3. I mean, that might have been one of the freest Fire Giants the Leviathans had. They had a 20,000 gold lead in game 1.
That's right. They were equal going in. We were gold lead equal in that mid lane fight, and now suddenly we are right back to where we were at the end of game 1, where the Titans were backpedaling constantly, weren't able to put up much of a fight around the tier 2s, around the Phoenixes, and the game simply ended quickly. Now it's got to be awkward for Aror because, you know, with the wall conversation and bailing out Paul and bailing out Stuart around these walls specifically. It's because if we're talking about the Maui as a bailout possibility, Aror then got to go backwards, right? You got to go away from the fight, and you're potentially relying on Aror to be an initiator. So it really is awkward now if you're saying, okay, don't worry guys, don't worry Paul, don't worry Stu, I can get you out of this. That also then relegates him to being further on the back. So you're going to have to hope that the onslaught, the forward press from the Titans may be enough that a wall doesn't matter. Now, Sot is in behind Panitom here. Sot has had actually a real nice game so far. This Bellona has felt like the last leg in so many of these fights for the Tartarus Titans. Unfortunately, Sheento has way too much damage. I'll call that a caster's curse. Maybe a forgettable moment now here in game 2 for SOT, caught out by the Leviathans. And that'll fuel up the tank. Could be another one onto Aror here, and the tier 2 tower will drop, so will the support. And now the Phoenix defense might not exist for the Tartarus Titans.
Yeah, 40 seconds without your front line in general. Cyno can only do so much. I mean, Phoenix-wise, this should be easy, and if Stuart goes down, this might just be game.
Yeah, Gore, Stuart will go down in the fountain. Panitom on a rampage. He wants to answer back the triple of Sheento with a double of his own. And the Leviathans playing with their food. Game 2 has been convincing. A Panitom triple, a double Susano triple for the Atlantis Leviathans. Unbelievable in game 2.
He heard us. he heard. He's like, hold on, wait. You're saying Sheento's got a better Susano?
Yep.
No. That steps up beautifully at the end of that. Again, both of them play. Also, throwing this one out there, but between Haddix, Sheento, and Panitom, 2 games now, there is a single death on the board, and that is on Sheento in that game. Otherwise, really massive kill lines. I do think we saw something that was very important to me, and even though he goes undying, I feel like we got slightly less of an impact from Haddix. Granted, that might just be merits of a Nike versus a Cthulhu in the team fight, but the slows were still too massive. The chase downs were really good. The silences were really solid because they landed on Stu a lot of the time. I think that even though it was like less of an impact, it was too impactful still. So you're limiting there. Too many great transformations. I'm gonna call for it. I want a Morrigan ban. I do not want to see either you first pick that and get it the hell away from Sheento, put it onto Paul, or you get it out of the game, because if he plays it again, it's just gonna be another loss.
I was gonna do a word association game with you there. I was gonna say, you're the Titans, you're going into game 3. The word ban, what does that bring to mind?
Morrigan.
Morrigan is what comes to my mind. Because think about it, in back-to-back games now, it's been Morrigan plus a playmaking assassin. And Sheento apparently can do that really, really, really well.
Yeah.
And if it's not Sheento, then Panitom on the actual pick is doing it really, really, really well. On the verge of a 3-0 defeat, the Tartarus Titans have some retooling to do. once again, we'll see if they can make the reverse sweep happen, starting in Game 3, coming up next.
Atlantis Leviathans are now 1 game away from making their way to being the first team to qualify to the SMITE World Championship with a win here in game number 2 over the Tartarus Titans, and a pretty convincing win that I would say over here, Mifflin. It seems that this Morrigan still holds on to be a problem going up against this squad. The Susano was really a big thorn as well for the Titans to try and deal with. Seems the Leviathans can do to go wrong with this mid selection.
Yeah, I mean, the Leviathans, they've just gotten a couple of drafts now in a row that are just so cleanly in their play style. It was just dominant performances from each individual player. Got to shout out Panitom out of the jungle. I really loved everything I'd seen from him, but that's no surprise. Susano has just been his bread and butter for a couple of months now. It feels like it's strange that he's able to get it as consistently as he has been. But it's because of the Leviathans having such high win rates on so many picks. The Morrigan, incredibly high up there. Ronngyu on this Ymir, very dominant as well. It becomes so difficult for teams to figure out how they want to address some of these ban phases. If anything, you just got to prevent drafts. You got to prevent draft styles. Individual picks, I think, you got to look a little bit past if you're the Tartarus Titans here. Or maybe, when all else fails and you can't find any footing in team fights, completely all in on early game aggression. We've seen that in the past as well. But the only thing I can say as of now concretely is that if this is going to go 4, we're going to need to see some wild shift ups from the Titans.
Yeah, the Titans just in these team fights really feel like they're kind of falling apart in some of them. There's been some great picks throughout some of the scattered fights they had. Think over to the team fight on the left side of the map. The tier 1 tower dive on a Zapman was a great showing from the Titans, but didn't really seem like they had everything all together whenever it came down to kind of the tail end of that fight there. So some signs of life from the Titans, but it really feels like the Leviathans on so many of these picks have just been getting high win rates. I mean, I look through 80% win rate for Ronngyu on this Ymir, looking over at Morrigan for Sheento, another 70+% win rate on that god. We already talked about how well Haddix has been performing on a lot of his picks. Just feels like the Leviathans can do no wrong with some of these selections out here. I mean, game number 1 into 2, we said, okay, we'll probably at least ban the Cthulhu, maybe take away the Daji. Now going from game 2 to 3, well, yes, those are problems. It also just does feel like being able to double up on any of these essential picks for the Leviathans with this Morrigan seems like that might be the next thorn that needs to go, Mifflin.
Yeah, maybe you target the Morrigan in the bans, or maybe you select a jungler that can at least pressure Panitom before he's allowed to get his own ganks rolling. There are avenues back in for the Titans, but it is worth noting again that this is a Titans roster that is essentially brand new. Plug and play is not exactly a word or terminology that I would use to describe your jungle player. He's so integral to how you approach the game. He's so integral to the communications. He's the only role, jungle that is, that has his hand in every single lane, that it's going to take a little bit of time, I think, for the Tartarus Titans to fully adapt to playing around Cyno. It's impressive what they've been able to accomplish so far, but Cyno is a player that has got an eclectic god pool like Chungle, that is difficult to build drafts around. It's difficult to figure out how you want to play your own pace of match, whereas the Leviathans have been just about static in their play style. They know what they're doing. They know when they want to play. They know when the power spikes happen. They know which lane to play through at what time, and it's clearly showing. The Leviathans just maneuvering the map and playing around these team fights a bit better as of now.
Well, we'll go ahead and add the 2 sets of bans together this time around. Cthulhu, Daji, and the Morrigan, the top 3 that won in game number 1, a third that still won in game number 2 for Leviathans, now all banned away by the Titans. Opposite side, no change-ups there. Set, Naja, and Yamoja with a Vulcan first pick for the Titans once again. And I believe now for the first time, or I guess technically now the second time that we've seen this tournament, Ishtar gets a lock in, this time for the Leviathans.
Yeah, I am such a massive fan of what Ishtar does. Her pressure in lane, the poke potential in the late game, the siege potential with those snipe auto attacks with the Odysseus bow style of build, the 1v1 potential because the CC immunity ultimate as well as the cripple just makes her so dominant. So I'd almost argue just blanket upgrade already for the Leviathans. The Titans, though, have got themselves a very highly contentious top 3 selection. I feel like Maui is going to be only stronger and stronger and more revered as we get more opportunities to see him in play. Vulcan, of course, can only sing that God's praises. Earthshaker can single-handedly win you a game if you hit a couple of priority targets. And Cupid has been a consistent in the hunter role as well. We'll see where the Leviathans go with this 3rd selection. Finally, an adaptation in the mid lane. Might be that we just see Sheento hold off on his, though.
Yeah, quite possibly. We'll see if he does end up making his selection now. Maybe we see potential of the double hunter come back. I mean, I know that one's not been nearly as popular, but Sheento doesn't want to wait on his selection. Instead, Scylla, after her recent buffs, getting a little bit of extra assistance with her clear in the jungle, with her clear on the minions that buff to crush, has kind of been brought to the light by a few of these mid laners, Myth.
Yeah, I'm not so certain that I'm all in on the Scylla train. Her buffs, of course, amazing, and some of the itemization changes, namely around Sands of Time, really helping out with that wave clear early on, I think have brought her a little bit more so into the meta. Always going to be a late game powerhouse. I'm a monster, phenomenal, and has plenty of setup already from the Leviathans. But it is a pick that can be countered. Things like a Wheelish are very, very strong into Scylla. The ability to avoid the crush, close gap. Sentinel is such a slow ability that Gravity Surge is pretty easy to line up there as well. So there are avenues and options that the Titans can go towards. And speaking of a Wheelish, I'm not wishing it on the Titans now. We want to see a little bit more of the draft first, but it's another pick that Cyno is very, very adept at going towards.
Yeah, we've definitely seen him go towards that pick in the SCC many a time so far this year. We'll see if that does end up being the option for the Titans. As we now jump in to the second wave of bans, Thor Athena will still be the calls for the Leviathans. Gilgamesh once again, but this time now the Susano. So we've taken away 4 of the big picks the Leviathans have been consistently going to so far in this set with those 5 bans, and then the Gilgamesh just being an added little bonus there. Well, there's a reason why Gilgamesh and the Leviathans have a skin at this point. It's because Panitom definitely a monster performer on that one, so no surprise seeing that banned away, especially with some of the buffs he got recently. But now the question is, where do the Leviathans go with their selection? A lot of the jungle has been taken away, still waiting on the solo lane. Is there anything kind of missing so far from this Leviathans composition you'd like to see maybe drafted up?
I mean, if you look at their top 3, it's the standards, right? You got your AoE CC and your space control from Ymir, single target DPS from Ishtar, and you've already got your burst potential as well as objective secure coming from Scylla. So from here, it's about just rounding out the draft with standard selections. I'm looking at maybe another initiator for the Leviathans, just another big body to create space for this Scylla, who is going to struggle against dive if the Titans can draft themselves a pretty decent dive in their last 2. Maybe a secondary Guardian, if you so choose. Haddix has gone towards some pretty consistent warriors in the past as well. Lancelot, I think that one's probably headed for Panitom, but does have some flex potential in the past. We've seen Variety take this god in the soul lane. Not one that I expect Haddix to be piloting, though.
Yeah, it really kind of feels like ever since Soul Leader ate a bit of a nerf, we haven't seen Lancelot go towards the solo lane quite as often anymore. Has mostly been geared towards the jungle. Captain Twig most notable and most recent to be taking that pick there. I think we saw Layers take it a few times as well when he was playing with the Titans. We'll see if what Cyno now elects to go towards as we do get to the bottom 2 for the Titans. SOT and Cyno both still holding on to their picks. Up against this squad, I mean, Scylla such a dominant late game god with that burst that she has capable of just between her own combo, can oftentimes set up for herself. So for the Titans, they've got a little bit of AoE damage. I shouldn't say a little bit. They've got a lot of AoE damage, AoE control out there. Any essential picks? I mean, I know you were leaning towards the Willis. That one's still maybe on the mind for you to go over for Cyno.
You've got a consistent knock-up from Vulcan. You've got a knock-up from Maui as well. Decent counter matchup. If you can get behind Ishtar, her dash actually does put her in Gravity Surge range, I believe, with that backflip. Scylla, of course, with the Sentinel. I think it's an okay lock-in. The only thing now with Lancelot is that massive cripple field makes it a little bit less appetizing to move in towards a Wheelish. You really want to have access to Feather Step at every opportunity, and if Lancelot's in the team fight, you probably just won't have that opportunity available to yourself. So maybe a warrior jungle, I think, for the Titans could go a pretty long ways. I've been advocating for just big frontline auto attack, stick to you style picks, and I think it would fit in here. Chaac, I mean, I guess. It's
another warrior with some big AoE out there as far as that's concerned. So only a single changeup to the Titans draft this time around. This time sliding the Cupid into the Hunter role. Besides that, 80% of the draft still remains the same. Opposite side, Atlantis Leviathans pick up Guan to add a little bit of healing and a little bit of extra, maybe initiation that you were kind of talking about for the Atlantis Leviathans. So another very strong, heavy dive comp that the Leviathans have built out here between the Guan, the Lancelot, and the Ymir. With only slotting the Cupid in now for the Tartarus Titans, do you like their chances a little bit more against this comp that the Leviathans have built up?
I'm thinking Ronngyu is going to have a field day into this draft. Vulcan and Cupid both really easy targets to lock down for the Ymir. Guan Yu's got phenomenal gap close. We've got both horse riders for the Leviathan, so dive is certainly there, movement speed's certainly there, the ability to get into that back line going to be pretty easy to execute on. But the conversation of counter dive has to be brought up. Which one of these back lines is more survivable? Can Vulcan and Cupid peel for themselves better than an Ishtar and a Scylla? At times, yes. I think that Scylla is going to be a little bit more survivable, though, having that CC immunity accessible in the ultimate, as well as that additional movement speed. Ishtar has that get off of me card, which is her ultimate as well. So if it is going to come down to which one of these dives sees success first, I would likely favor the Leviathans, which means that I kind of just favor the Leviathans in a late game team fight.
So, I mean, right now we're looking at the potential of Leviathans getting a 3-0, being the first teams to qualify over into the SWC, which would make it for the Tartarus Titans a little bit more difficult of a road. It means they'd have to go down to the lower bracket, and they'd have to kind of crawl their way back up through to have a chance. Remember, only the top 4 teams of the 6 will be the ones to qualify automatically to SWC. For now, the other 2 will have to wait until the week before that in January. For the Tartarus Titans, Mifflin, what stage of the game these guys got to get active? Do they need to be the ones jumping in the first 5 to 10 minutes to try and get this game going, or can the Tartarus Titans kind of wait out a little bit longer against the Leviathans?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the Titans, I would say, because of just the point that I had made, that I believe the Leviathans will have better late game team fight, that you'd want to see them getting earlier, or getting active a little bit earlier than the Leviathans. But when I look at Lancelot as opposed to Chaac, that's way easier to execute on ganks, especially levels 1 through 4. Maybe mid-game is what you're looking at for the Tartarus Titans. Objective play, I think, certainly a topic of conversation as well. They've got phenomenal objective burn. Let's say like 10 minutes in, let's get the Titans active.
Well, let's see if the Tartarus Titans can take us to a game number 4. Will the Leviathans be our first team to qualify to the SWC? We'll find out in game number 3 with Dulcin and Gore.
Yeah, you're favoring your phase 3 1 seed to make it to Worlds no matter what, but they can get it done right here. Now, remember, this is a storied matchup now. The SWC Grand Finals last year, that one convincingly to the Atlantis Leviathans in 3 straight games. Gormaiza were on the verge of another 3-0 for the Leviathans towards the end of the year over the Tartarus Titans. Now, the Titans roster, you know, very different from what it was in finals last year, but Paul and Aror still sticking around here. We called for a Morrigan ban. We got a Morrigan ban. At least.
Yeah.
It's going to have to be Sheento getting it done on the Scylla this time instead of transforming into whatever assassin Panitom is playing and snagging a triple kill for himself at the end of the game.
Honestly, I like, it's weird because I'm very much in the same boat as Mifflin, where I'm not fully sold on Scylla just yet. I still like the Yu Huangs, things like that for the mages. But given the field of mages that they had, 4 weeks ago? Well, maybe a little longer, 6 weeks ago. It is definitely expanded. I like Scylla. I think that Sheento is going to be able to make some pretty interesting plays. I mean, look, you've got a wall and a freeze from a Ronngyu that's going to set up the easiest time of monsters maybe in the world, unless they go for a Phantom Shell, which, as we can see now at least, is not on the docket for the Titans. So later on, level 12, that's going to be important for some of those late-game team fights. Otherwise, Sheento might just one-shot some of the carries and make this a much easier game for the Leviathans than maybe needs to be. I'm also, and this one, admittedly, I know that the Titans scenario coming into this wasn't maybe the best case for them. But you gotta imagine Cyno's got something in the pocket other than the Naja and the Chaac, right? It just feels so weird to continually go back to this.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't immediately think of other assassins that I'm just like, that's the one that I'm gonna go to. But you gotta have something somewhere.
And we know he does, but
could fit in there. Yeah, it's just weird that we haven't seen it.
Right, wondering why we stuck with this so heavily. Paul will use his Aegis very early on here. It was just a crush from Sheento that forced that out. And you know what? I mean, it's Vulcan again for Paul here. And Gore, we talked a lot about it in game 2, where we're like, oh yeah, Cyno should have some good setup, big circular AoE knockup. You know, SOT on the Bellona again. Yeah, it's good circular AoE stun. That should be good for some Earthshaker setup. Now you've got Stuart on the Cupid with the Fields of Love. That should be some good circular AoE setup. And then of course Aror with his pullback on the ultimate. But we didn't. I don't think we saw it much in game 2. We didn't see that big AoE team fight really come to fruition.
No, not really.
The Titans have a very, very similar draft here. Maybe the Leviathans have just had some good answers around those AoE team fights, forcing the abilities, forcing the ultimates, rather than letting them be used aggressively from the Titans. Here's some aggression, though. Titans, an invade on the second red buff of the game. Cyno and Aror, and it looks like Sheento happy to just give it up. A small win for the Titans in the first couple of minutes.
Honestly, I'm not too surprised. Like, first off, in just that kind of scenario, I don't think you want to fight if you're Sheento there. If there had been some rotations, unfortunately, you know, Panitom's over on the speed buff. There's too much going on right, so it's a really well-timed invade from the Titans. And you were at this point where, at least for Sheento, you were kind of bullying Paul in lane. Like, you've had control of this lane for the most part, so losing the red buff hurts, but it's not the end of the world. I think we're going to see a lot of it. Paul hit 4 first, so should hit 5 first. Now with that experience stripped away. And that might be the big difference maker. Now having that ultimate online, maybe some of the setup that could come down, a good silence onto a Scylla, kind of eliminating her ability to disengage into an Earthshaker or something like that. Suddenly, you're finding a first blood pretty early on if you're the Titans. So I do like where they found their pressure already.
Gore, I mentioned this yesterday. I was casting with Trelly, and I'm gonna echo it to you, because you and I we always have these big high-end conversations about worlds and teams, and I enjoy our little talk score. I hope I hope that Scylla. I know Myth. This is actually a two-pronged statement. I feel like I remember Myth being a violence not the right word, an aggressive Scylla hater early on in his SMITE casting career. Wasn't that a thing? We might have even caught a little heat for it from him. He was like, maybe dial it down a bit. So no surprise that he's not fully on the Scylla train just yet. But I do hope that Scylla is somewhere in the meta come Worlds time, because big I'm a monster, and Paul and the history that he has brought to that pick at Worlds specifically, now that we're on a main stage with fans, I'm hoping it is as good as maybe some of these pros think. Maybe SOT is hoping that he's able to get out of this gank. He is. Eagles rally defensively. Panitom funneling his aggression early over to SOT on right.
And I think a lot of this, I mean, you slow down a little bit of SOT, but realistically, you're keeping some of the experience in your favor. I think if Cyno falls behind here, there's less that this Chaac jungle is going to be able to do than Lancelot can do from behind, right? So I think that just a small lead, even if you can strip anything away or just get some extra farm onto yourself for Panitom, is going to be a big win. I feel like he's got opportunities pretty much everywhere on the map, too. Not really looking at any of these lanes and thinking, that's someone he just can't gank. Like, actually, SOT might be the hardest one to gank just because of the Eagles rally, but for the most part, you've got enough chase down between the Lancelot and the Guan that I don't know that you're too worried about it. Tier 1 towers at this point, I mean, we're only 5 minutes in, are very adept at thwarting deep dives. But I expect to see a lot of Panitom throughout this game.
I think worth mentioning, and you know, the set, not over yet, but it's a reverse sweep necessary now for the Titans. You know, this is a short notice change for the Titans. They just now bring in Cyno, so you're expecting overtime, and they still very well could. And maybe now with their result over the Oni Warriors, be favored to just qualify from Phase 3 playoffs. Remember, 4 teams going. 2 of our 6 SPL teams that are here at this event will have to go to the group stages early in January and qualify from there. But you expect this Titans roster to get better over time when the jungle synergy picks up. Maybe that's some of it with Cyno, and we're talking about some of the picks that we've seen. It's felt somewhat limited from him so far. Maybe that's just what the team has felt comfortable playing around up to this point. And maybe you get some more pick diversity down the stretch. But got to give it its opportunity to breathe a bit, and we'll see if the Chaac gets it going for Cyno here in this game. Panitom galloping around. Never quite know with Lancelot when he's on the horse, you never know when that ultimate's suddenly going to get sprung on you. Holding it just in the back pocket this time. Paul had to use his Aegis early in this game.
Yeah.
Was never punished for it. Panitom didn't like his odds there, dashing into Paul. But this type of pacing, Gore, first 6 minutes, no surprise. What we saw in game 2. It's even what we saw a bit of in game 1. But centering around Ronngyu, the walls and the freezes, that's when the pace starts to get picked up. Ronngyu missed both just now. And here's your setup. That's what we've wanted to see from the Titans. All the circles collapsing.
There it is.
No! But you don't have any circles left. Sheento returns the favor. It's a double kill for the Leviathans. I spoke way too soon. The Titans find first blood, but a double kill on the Scylla to answer.
And I was going to piggyback on what you were saying, and that's the perfect example, because that's a mini skirmish in the jungle. That's what you can expect from the team fights to me. I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for the Titans, but you mentioned the pace of this game. You start looking towards the longevity, the 25-minute mark, and you've got so much power from the Leviathans, even here against SOT.
Wow, SOT, he'll drop, won't trade out the kill onto Panitom. That's really nice. Channel an insta-cancel of the ult from Haddix there to get an insta-stun onto SOT. And SOT just doing a bit too much. It looked like Haddix was able to pick up the buff anyway. Now a blue buff spawned on the Titan side of the map. But that's massive. So you're right. You said there it is in the middle of that team fight. You're totally correct. The I'm a monster and the ability to delete a target, to turn it around. Feels like both Paul and Sheento in a similar territory.
Yeah.
But the fact that the kill drops onto Ronngyu, that's where Stuart was able to pick up the kill. Not surprising. At some point, Rongyu's like, all right, look, I got to go into Shards of Ice. I'm rooting myself in place. You should be able to hit all your damage onto that target. It's about getting it onto someone else as the game goes on for the Titans.
And it's one of those scenarios that goes perfectly for the Leviathans if the wall, or specifically the freeze, locks down someone like Aror initially. Losing someone like Ronngyu for that kind of trade is never going to hurt you, especially because it's put you in a position to continue doing this, right? You're just bullying. I mean, you bully over there near SOT, and you just barely have to avoid drop, or I guess you have to drop that kill because of the rotations, but I mean, Aror walks away barely in that kind of scenario. And I think that's what we're looking at right now for the Leviathans, is the fact that they've put themselves, not just like set-wise, ignoring the set, the score, things like that, and the history so far. Just in this game, I think picks-wise, and the way that they're going to play them, have put themselves in a position to find a lot of very violent numbers victories in fights like that, just because of what I'm a Monster can do. You had mentioned Paul having similar capabilities, and it's that weird balance, right, where it's like one really big, really wide ultimate ability versus one smaller, heavy hitter that you're going to get out of Sheento.
Haddix was close by here, back away. And you mentioned kind of focusing on this one game in particular, and I'll hold that thought. Yeah, Panitom and Ronngyu will turn, head the other way. Auror's here as well. Would this be a 3v3 over in solo? Haddix is the lowest player on this side of the map right now. This could be another blue buff invade for the Titans. Remember, the last one did not work out well for SOT. Here's an Earth Shaker. Ronngyu takes it again, but a bit of healing on the back end. Devin killed off the Ymir. Takes a dive in from SOT to complete the kill. But this is what we've seen time and time again. The Titans going too far to confirm the one kill and end up dropping 2 in trade.
And
onto Ronngyu.
It's the balance, right? It's onto the support. Yeah, Ymir can go 0-6, but if he's getting trades like this, it's worthwhile.
That's good from Stu. Pre-beads. Won't have the leg.
Panitom's here?
Chase down onto Zap.
No
Zap
way
doesn't
they turn
get the
this.
root onto Stu, and now Panitom will head right back out. Got to go back to that solo lane, though, Gore, because, you know, again, it's an example of, okay, we've got this lockdown and set up onto Ronngyu. Ronngyu says, okay, I'm going to Shards of Ice, see what happens. Then he dies, but it required a dive from SOT, dive from Cyno, and it puts him in a bad spot.
It's just they're paying such a heavy investment to kill Ronngyu, to then not have anything for the disengage. And unfortunately for you now, I mean, it's showcasing again why this Chaac jungle. You know, you look at it yesterday. You can meme, hey, it won, but like we saw it a lot in Summer Masters. There's a reason it wasn't there in Phase 2. We're seeing it here in Phase 3 playoffs, and it is the same thing that has me scratching my head when I see it in the picks and bans, which is there's got to be something else that at worst isn't going to be worse for you than having it. It just feels like Cyno can't really get his hands on the game right now the way that you need out of your jungler. And unfortunately, it leaves Paul in this scenario where, yeah, you're hitting some massive ults. You've got 2 assists on the 2 kills your team has, but you're killing the really slow, giant Ymir. You're not really getting crazy impact plays. And so I'm just wondering what the Titans are going to do to adapt to this.
I was going to say it's a close fight. Pyromancer puts up a decent fight, but that's a nice call from the Titans. They're able to drop Pyro, and there is no Gold Fury pull from the Atlantis Leviathans. And that's where the Titans have funneled a lot of their pressure, Gore. Right side of the map. It's been, can we slow down Haddix? Can we invade the blue buff? And unfortunately for the Titans, what do they have to show for it? It's a 1-level lead for Haddix over in the solo lane, and the Titans just lost a 2v1, or 2-for-1 rather, around the blue buff. Yes, Pyromancer, that's a win. But where the pressure has been placed from Cyno hasn't necessarily resulted in a big lead. Now, Cyno just picks up the kin size again, so it wasn't a one-hit wonder there in game 1. Actually, I think might have had it in game 2 as well. We'll now see if that translates to a bit more damage later on in this game. And Sod has had some back-to-back really nice games on this Bellona. I do wonder, though, Gore, I mean, the Chaac conversation is one I think we could have for a long time. And I do wonder if it goes back to just practice time with this team. I mean, clearly haven't figured out the pacing quite yet early on in the game. I wonder if it's just a simple stopgap style of team fight pick where we can get a big circle to land, we're in a good spot. See what the Titans could do around this Gold Fury because the Leviathans have pulled it. Now, what we saw in game 1 was the Titans letting these go down this far in gold, but not wanting to do that here. The circles drop, none of them hit. Now, team fight limited for the Tartarus Titans, and the Leviathans have to realize that. And it's a stun onto Aror. Stuart had to use the beads, Aror left alone. And a singular pick for the Leviathans that could get worse as Panitom gallops forward. I'm a monster, it's channeled. It doesn't connect onto Stu because of the Aegis, but Stu has been walled, Stu has been crushed, and Sheento will get his 3rd straight.
And look, now it's just the chase down. Paul should live from this, Cyno should live from this. But there's not much you can really do for your team, and you have to play it very carefully because the Leviathans are out for blood.
Goodness.
I mean, just run down, like looking at the beginning of that fight, maybe there's going to be a little bit more of that fight. I don't know what Cyno wanted to accomplish. Certainly not that, but it was not going to happen either way. The immediate, before the fight even truly begins, you called it, lots of circles get thrown out by the Titans. 4 ults are dropped. Not a single one of them does anything. 1 ult at that point is used by the Leviathans. This is just Haddix. Nothing crazy. They had 4 ults for the resurgence fight afterward. I just think, like, again, a heavy investment. Unfortunately, you know, all of them going wide, but it just kind of goes to show where their aggression is and how telegraphed it is. I mean, you can see a Chaac from a mile away when he's going for an ult. You can see the Vulcan ult from a mile away because of how long it has for travel time. Maui's ult, I think, very, very prominent there. Same thing for the Fields of Love, very prominent there. Unfortunate for them, just not getting any real pressure out on the board for them. And then you get the Leviathans in a brilliant position to just continue moving forward. And it's that ult from Panitom. They had the zone. They really didn't need to chase it down. They were going to get that Fury for free. But an ult from Panitom locks enough people down, gets enough people into a threshold where suddenly you can win this fight. It's not just can we zone them out. It's like, wait, we can kill some of these guys. Sot is half health. Cyno is half health. Like, a lot of these guys are forced to the position that they cannot do anything anymore. And you force an Aegis plus the beads out of Stuart and get the kill. You get the beads out of Paul, chase him down over the entirety of the map. Aror, Cyno, Sot, they just kind of get caught out in bad positions at that point. And it's a lot easier for the Leviathans to pick them apart. It's just a very... I mean, it's a bad engage, right, from the Titans, and a really, really well-played re-engage from the Leviathans to make sure that it stays not just in their favor, but overwhelmingly on their side.
I wonder if, you know, between cavalry charge... Now, Panitom was able to use his ult aggressively just a moment ago. Goodbye, Stuart. That's a nice combination from the Leviathans over on the left. Yeah, but Tartarus Titans don't necessarily have a numbers advantage here on right. In fact, they're a bit behind. They had 1 over in mid, and the Leviathans sent a few over towards the blue buff. I wonder between, you know, cavalry charge, the ultimate away from Panitom. Last time it was in, but can use it defensively. Sheento with the Sentinel can dash away. You know, so there's a lot maybe landing on Fields of Love and crippling some of the disengage. But you know, you bring up telegraphed. I wonder if that's a lot of it. You know, you see Cyno go up, wait for that ultimate to crash down. Everyone from the Leviathan says, hey, let's just back up for a second and then go back in. You know, I want to throw a life raft to the Titans fans who may be panicking here. You know, we got to see what happens here in Game 3, but the trend has been set, and they're nearly 6,000 gold ahead of the Leviathans on kills and farm being stolen away. So if the Leviathans play as cleanly as they have, this will be a 3-0 and a Worlds qualification for the Leviathans. A life raft to the Titans fans. I do think that this team will look better with time because you're still learning to synergize with your jungler. You've only had a couple of days of practice and trying to figure it all out here. And also, you're not out of the event after this. If you lose this set, you go on to play tomorrow for a chance to qualify to Worlds there. You've already crushed the Oni Warriors earlier on this weekend. The Bolts didn't look fantastic either. Titans still absolutely can get it done here this weekend. This has just been a lopsided set, however. It's an Earthshaker at Paul's feet. Finds some good damage, but Panitom, Haddix, they'll gallop through. Now SOT alone, as the rest of his team has had to get away. Haddix, no, he can't live. He can't, he does. The Titans, they're given one, but they're unable to finish off the kill, and now Zapman has arrived. Zapman will bring the damage. Aror is pulled back. Ronngyu, you don't want to bring him towards you. A killing spree for Panitom. And needless to say, another 3 for none for the Leviathans.
I mean, at this point, with those health bars, yeah, that better be a fire giant. Probably a pyro just for giggles at that point, right? Because it's going to be so easy to pull it, have the detonation. You don't need the large confirmation that you would have out of an I'm a Monster. I mean, you have such a overwhelming control of this game right now if you are the Leviathans. And a lot of it, again, it's just coming from really, really good fight back into the Titans. Titans can go for any sort of aggression that they want. There's just not too much that you can do about it. Leviathans are playing incredibly well as a full force. Gonna throw this out there again just because it feels so prevalent. This is Game 3, and between Haddix, Panitom, and Sheento, there is still only a single death on the board across all 3 of them.
Did Sheento die once?
Sheento died once last game, and Haddix and Panitom have not died at all.
All set long. And honestly, the majority of the deaths, and this is no slight to Ronngyu, have been on Ronngyu. He's been a Ymir. He's been catching all the initiation and the damage.
Honestly, doing the thing that you want to support it. Like, if Ronngyu was dying, but it's giving Sheento, Panitom, Haddix, and Zap all sorts of room to work with, do it every single time.
And Rongyu's
so worthwhile.
Rongyu's 4 levels ahead. You know, I don't think Aror has been egregiously bad by any means this set.
No, not at all.
But also worth mentioning, it's been a lot of Maui. So I think if we're going to talk about Cyno sticking with the Chaac, I think you say, all right, do we adjust some of our support picks maybe? You know, I think there is still some adjustment to be made for this Titans team. That said, these styles of comps worked yesterday. So, you know, it's finding the balance between, all right, why did it work here? Why did it not work here? Because there is some value in what we've seen from the Titans comp, this type of comp. It's just been none of it today against the Leviathans.
Well, and there's conversations, like, I guess at that point about opponents you're facing, right?
Yeah,
Leviathans, I think, incredibly strong. Warriors notoriously bad at tournaments, and I think that's something that admittedly, tomorrow we're going to have to see finalized for them because they have struggled. I mean, you go back to Worlds qualifiers last year, and they're one of the initial SBL teams that get knocked out alongside the Valkyries that don't even get to see the World Championship. They definitely don't want to feel the same thing this weekend. They'd like to be able to qualify, but I think if you're the Titans, you have to talk a little bit about that matchup. We were talking about it, the Warriors after that set. We're immediately looking at VOD review, trying to figure out, you know, what do they need to do to change. But if I'm looking at this, I'm thinking there's a little more to the wall if you want to be more than just the top 4 here for the Titans.
Your defending world champions, Atlantis Leviathans, now maybe one team fight away from booking their tickets to Arlington, Texas, at the eSports Stadium there. Panitom rejoins this fight from the right. Earthshaker forces the Aegis out of Zapman. A bit of value there. But a massive 4-man wall from Ronngyu. Unfortunately, the freeze does not follow. But enough space has been created for some damage to flow into this Phoenix. A teleport will roll through.
I actually like this for the Titans.
Poke damage out, and that's where the range. The third stance on the Ishtar first ability can poke out while backpedaling away. Ultimate, still have Sheento, still have Panitom. Cavalry charge still there as well.
That healing from the Guan Yu is keeping this alive for the Leviathans. I mean, Ronngyu was essentially knocked out of this fight, not in a position to be able to get aggressive, but you can see already back to 2/3 HP, was sitting under a third. And now all of a sudden the freezes are there. The walls are still, the
no.
damage is still there. I mean, they have so much on the Leviathans to work with. But I like the Titans' defense. I think a good pull, a good ult potentially soon from Aror when it comes up could be a massive play to pull people into the Phoenix.
That was nice from Paul, but Aror goes in alone, left side Phoenix. It's low, Panitom also in on his own.
He's dead.
This is a good option for the Tartarus Titans. They've killed off Panitom, and a shaky siege from the Leviathans has given a kill to the Titans.
And look, considering that's the first kill in at least 5 minutes, if not longer.
First death on Panitom as well.
And yeah, the first death, so now 2 between the 3 players for the Leviathans. That is a really good defense spot, and if Aror had been able to get his ult, I mean, just a few seconds earlier, there were definitely moments where it could have gone catastrophically wrong for the Leviathans. So really good defense from the Titans there. And I just need to see more of that, right? And unfortunately, I kind of hate the fact that it has to be on defense, and even still, that Phoenix barely lives. But it's a good first step, right? When you've been in the set that they have been in, admittedly a little more of a tug of war there in game number 2. But with game 1, and especially the way game 3 so far has gone, you're still 10,000 gold down. You've got to find small victories whenever you can. Defense on left, not having to deal with those fire minions is a massive deal going into the next Fire Giant fight. You put yourselves in a position where you can still fight for it. You can still look at this Pyromancer at the minimum if it becomes a long dance. And you can start up a fight that makes the Leviathans feel a little too awkward to try and truly compete.
Yeah, you can. You have the option. TBD on if they should. You're 3 levels down if you're Paul, 3 levels down, Stu, 3 levels down now, SOT. Their counterparts all level 20. Not leaving out Cyno, he's 2 levels down to the level 20 of Panitom. And then 4 still. Aror beneath Ronngyu. Now remember, the Leviathans, in all likelihood, win the game 3 here, win this set, barring a really nice Titans turnaround. It's going to require a few dropped balls, though, from the Leviathans, and it's not a team that fumbles often. The Leviathans will still have something to play for the remainder of this weekend. You're looking for seeding. Remember, first seed from this event gets to choose any of the 4 options coming out of group stages early on in January.
There's always that conversation around the first seed curse, though, right? When it comes down to Worlds, that's much more of a month from now conversation. But the first seed curse has not been something that you particularly want going into the World Championship. Admittedly, also an interesting dynamic for Zap, depending on how the rest of the set goes and the rest of this weekend. But given the setup right now, someone who has played through the long qualifiers every single time to get to the World Championship, it is definitely a different order of magnitude if he qualifies directly in.
If I understand correctly, by winning this, you're guaranteed first or second seed because you'll face off against the other semifinal winner on Sunday, and then that just determines first or second seed. So you either get your pick of 4 or 3 teams, right, going into the SMITE World Championship. Now it's a 3-2 split here for the Leviathans. You might be able to win a 3v5 with how far ahead you are. Stuart's got to dash away. We've seen that plenty in this set so far. SOT applies a bit of pressure to Zapman. Also seen plenty of that. Saw it. Despite 1 and 4, has had some good Bellona games up to this point. Unfortunately, here in game 3, not one of them. A little bit more damage needed on this right side bird.
Paul has no relics, beads down for Zap, so some opportunities for both the Titans, but mainly for the Leviathans to potentially poke out if they can get to that Vulcan. A lot of deep dives from Panitom earlier on that were just shy of potentially knocking them down, but a lot of damage. I like where the Titans are at. I like their defense here. It's just so difficult to hold.
Is that a heart bomb stun? That was crazy. Hit 4 of the Leviathans. Unfortunately, the Titans so far behind that a 4-man stun doesn't mean anything. Aror doesn't have ultimate. Freeze from Ronngyu, connects onto SOT. Now the Phoenix is gone. The Leviathans have some space to operate. Backline is an afterthought. Over from the mid lane comes Panitom to the tune of a double kill. He's got 1 triple already in this set. Zapman will take away his second. And the Atlantis Leviathans, as clean as it gets, will end game 3. Haddix ends this one undying. Sheento maybe has died 1 time this entire set. First seed for a reason, and the defending champs go back to Worlds.
They played it clean. I mean, there's no other way to slice that one. There's a couple of stumbles in game number 2. But they came out on top of that one, and for good reason. Like you said, it's just very consistent, very good gameplay. And even in that one, right, it's a couple of moments very, very early on where the Titans have that small advantage.
Yep.
But unfortunately for them, it just kind of falls apart when it comes down to a lot of the team fights. It's just, where's your engage and what is your engage going to do? Again, this one, it feels like that fight around a Gold Fury. Nothing hits for the Titans on their engage, and then the Leviathans come in and just sweep them down, take the Fury as well. Feels like that was that moment where it was like, all right, this is starting to fall apart, like in shambles from that point forward. Still some good opportunities. I mean, we saw some defense potential coming down from the Titans, but I think that what we get to see out of this is like you said, first off, the reason they're world champs, the reason they're reigning, the reason they picked up Haddix, right? Because he's just such a monster. And then, well, I guess that was Sheento that game. Right. But then you also get just such a dominant performance from this team in Phase 3. It just makes sense that they qualify.
I mean, we knew one way or another they'd get there.
They were going to go to Worlds.
But the fact that they got there in this type of way just makes some sense. Titans not out of it yet. They got a qualification/elimination match to go tomorrow. Either going to Worlds or going to group stages for the Titans. Now the Atlantis Leviathans guaranteed first or second seed, depending on how their seeding match ends up going on Sunday. Great luck for the defending champs. And they get the 3-0 win over the Tartarus Titans. That's it for Gore and I. We'll go back to the desk to break this one down.
Yeah, that's right. The Leviathans, your first team to qualify to the SWC and your #1 seed coming into this event, and also a first time in 4 years for Zapman to not have to go through a qualification extra round before he does get to Worlds. He gets to take the nice express ticket here with the rest of his team. But a lot of that one, Mifflin, it really just felt like, yes, the Titans had some nice siege defenses. Yes, they were able to hold out. The problem is that the Titans had so much sustain into their kit, the Guan, even having these fire giant buffs on them. Felt like the Titans really didn't have an answer to that when it came down to the defense. Some of these early game team fights, well, I mean, we look at the Gold Fury fight where the Titans had lost out there, and then we look over to the right side of the map, and for some reason, Sot's doing an invade and dying in a 2v1 scenario.
I mean, let's call a spade, man. The Titans just didn't build enough anti-heal, and it could be gold diff, right? Like, they just didn't have the money for it, but, I mean, that's how it works, I suppose. Yeah, but when you talk about the early game, I think you have to at least mention that the Titans started off the majority of those engagements well. They just didn't have an escape plan. We got our pick. How do we get out? You go out in a body bag, 2 for 1, every single time. SOT, when he sees the fight go south on the opposite side of the map, that pick that you're talking about, he's trying to make a play because he realizes, all right, well, they're on the left-hand side. I've got a little bit of time, but sticks around too long, and then things go severely south when it becomes a 3 for 1, essentially. And the Leviathans, when they are allowed to establish a lead, they just do. They just hold on to it. They're very similar to the Kings in that regard.
Yeah, it's very difficult to beat the Atlantis Leviathans when they're looking this hot. We've got the 3-time standing by for our post-game interview at Zapman with Dulcin.
That's right. Zapman qualified to Worlds once again, and the desk talked about it, Zap. For the first time in a little while, you get the express route into Worlds. You know, you'll still play for seeding a bit later on. I'm sure this team figured you'd go eventually anyway, whether it was today, tomorrow, group stages, worst case scenarios. Does it feel like a weight off, though, just to qualify in no matter what you're going?
Yeah, it's definitely a different feeling for me. You know, I'm used to just going down in the dregs and just trying to, like, you know, grind our way out. But yeah, it's always a weight off your shoulders. You know, you never know what team's going to perform on the weekends, and just to make it there is a good feeling.
And look, on Sunday in your seeding match, you'll play up against the winner of our next match here today. So first or second seed. Is that something you're considering? I guess you either get your choice of 4 teams or 3 teams coming out of that group stage. You think seeding 1 or 2, a little something extra to play for?
Yeah, I think the admins or whoever decided that made a really good reward. Like, getting first seed is extremely important here, controlling your bracket. So we're definitely going to try to win that, and it's definitely one of the most important things to do.
Well, I want to talk about this match a little bit. We have to, unfortunately, for Titans fans out there, because this one felt very one-sided. What do you think overall went so well for you guys today? It was 3 straight games, very similar play styles, and very clean SMITE.
Yeah, I mean, we just wanted to play our game. We wanted to play clean SMITE, like you said. They were, you know, invading, forcing invades and all that stuff. We just, you know, we didn't defend them, and we fought when we were strong. We fought on our terms, and that was kind of what we wanted to do today. We just want to play our game.
Final question. Preference? Dragons, Kings, other side of the matchup. You guys have a preference on Sunday?
No, I think they're both equally scary. They look really good. The Kings are definitely on a hot streak right now. The Dragons, they always look good, so either one is going to be a tough battle.
Well, Zap, welcome back to Worlds. GG's on the game. We'll go back to the desk to wrap this one up.
Yeah, Zapman doesn't seem to be too worried about whatever his opponent may be come towards the end of the week. Remember, on Sunday, the seeding match between them and the winner of our second set will be determined out there to see who gets the first seed, who gets the second seed going to the SWC. But starting off with a win here today, a 3-0 for the Atlantis Leviathans, a great look for them, and maybe a great look for their fans as well, as all of them out there supporting to maybe potentially see a running. I mean, this is now that we already had the potential to see a first time in history of a 3-time champion. Now it's Zapman qualifying to Worlds again with a team as good as this looks. Mifflin, we have potential for the first and only 4-time champion as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is so impressive. Zapman, obviously, just going to be probably the most history player of all time. I mean, this is essentially GOAT status at this point. I mean, it's wild to think about the run that he's had over the last couple of years. And when we talk about Zapman, you can always talk about some of the standout performances that he's had, but you also have to talk about, and I know it's a meme, the intangibles. When you're given the opportunity to hear Zapman speak, he is so prolific in his knowledge of SMITE. He is so well thought out. He has clear, defined goals for his team, how he wants to play the trajectory of the year, how he wants to build the squad around him, compositions, how you position, everything. This guy has thought it all through. He's one of the few chess players that SMITE has, and it's always a treat to see how teams adapt once they pick him up, because Zapman brings something to every single squad that he's been on. When you look at the PK roster, when you look at the Leviathans, they all start to slowly mesh into this Zapman style, and every team looks better for it.
I mean, even kind of taking just one little tidbit from that last bit, I mean, you heard how he said, okay, the Titans, they came in here trying to do these invades, they kept trying to go for these really risky plays, and we just let them. That's the confidence level that Zapman has in his squad. He said, you know, we just let the Titans kind of do what they wanted because we knew that we could win out. We knew that we could come back, whether it be a mid-game skirmish or a late-game team fight. He's got the confidence in his team, and with the players backing him, I mean, 3 of the 4 teammates that he had last World Championship run, the only person now subbed in place there was Yarkor for Haddix. It seems that Haddix has slotted very cleanly into this roster for the team. And you can go back to the kind of the beginning of the phase whenever we were first talking with Haddix about jumping over to this Leviathans roster. Even Haddix is kind of saying, you know, this is kind of the team that I thought I was going to be jumping into the SPL with at one point. Well, now he's here with this squad, #1 seed and first one to qualify to Worlds. Got to feel great for Haddix and the boys.
Well, it is worth noting, Haddix retconned that statement. When he was pressed on it, he said, I don't know why I said it. I thought it sounded cool in the moment. He was right. It did.
It was right.
Haddix, of course, a very, very strong player, one of the best in role right now, and just dominant in these team fights. I think Haddix is one of the best to rotate out of lane and make his stamp known early on. He gets involved in the mid 3v3s. He plays around the objectives. He's dictating the pace. So often we see when soul laners rotate out, we see that's when the game starts, right? It's that first rotation of gold for you, that first rotation of pyro. Keep your eyes on Haddix. He's usually 5 or 6 steps ahead of whoever's behind him, or whoever he's laning against, rather.
Well, that's our first set of the day. We can take a look at the bracket for our weekend to see how the rest of it will kind of start to pan out there. So we have the Leviathans moving on. They will be the first team to qualify to the SWC. They'll be awaiting the winner of the Jade Dragons and the Camelot Kings for their matchup in that regard. The Tartarus Titans, unfortunately, they'll have to drop down into the lower end of the bracket themselves in order to see how their matchup is going to be going later on to the week. But that means we do still have one more best of 5 going on today. The Jade Dragons and the Camelot Kings will be facing off after here. Winner again faces off with the Leviathans. Loser has to make a run down through the lower bracket to see if they can have their last chance to qualify in this tournament at the least. And remember, for the 2 teams that don't qualify from this, it's not the end of the road from them. We'll see them again in January with the Scarabs, the Valks, and some of the SCC squads for one final chance to qualify to Worlds.
So if your favorites haven't made it quite just yet, still some opportunities to go from here, but elimination matches I think always the most fun to watch. I'm keeping my eyes on the rest of this week.
Yeah, for sure. All of the matchups tomorrow will be not only promotional teams that do make it into the World Championships, but also the elimination matchups will go through tomorrow. But we still have one promotional match to go today. Jade Dragons and Camelot Kings will be up next. And a reminder, all these matches for the remainder of this weekend are best of 5 as well. So potential for some big 5-game sets against these squads. And I imagine with the matchup we're going to be seeing in the next one, Jade Dragons and Camelot Kings, this is one that it might be expected to be a little bit closer. We'll get to see that matchup in just a few minutes right after this break.